like Gaza?
Because once we finish with Hamas, there will be a room for other forces to emerge. And by the way, we are talking with few power and organizations about this possibility. But you know, when people look at what's happening today in Gaza and they see that Hamas is still in charge of the humanitarian aid and Hamas is still hiding in the tunnels, people are not very keen to come and start to walk over there. But once we finish Hamas, I believe there will be an opening for many initiatives, local initiatives and foreign initiatives to support the population there.
Danny, Danon, we have to end there. I thank you very much for joining me on Hard Talk.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Jeff Goods. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. This is CBC, and thanks for joining us. Cloudy for the day today in Winnipeg. Periods of light snow beginning this morning once again, and our high around zero. Sounds a great deal like yesterday. It's going to be windy as well. Current temperatures at 3 minutes to 6 a.m. Winnipeg is sitting at -1. That's the warm spot in the province, so let that soak in for a sec. In Brandon, it's -3. In Dauphin, it is right now light snow and -4. And up in Thompson, light snow and -8 as we watch that system move out of the province here. Good morning to the team. Brad Lilly's behind the glass this morning. Good morning, Brad. Good morning, Corey Funk, who is also there. Corey directs the show and will be covering on air the commute. And Abby Adiemi covers weather on the show and is our technical producer as well. Good morning, Abby. Heather Wells is in our news center today. Let's find out what's making headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's interim Liberal leader accuses the NDP government of being negligent with the provincial nominee program. Cindy Lamoureux says she's had hundreds of complaints from people waiting for their applications to be accepted. She says the nominee program ran smoothly under the previous Tory government. Now, yesterday, the Conservatives demanded the resignation of Labour and Immigration Minister Malaya Marcelino. We'll hear more about that. And Winnipeg business owners are gearing up for whiteout street parties starting Sunday. Will Galt runs Willie's Dogs. He'll be setting up his hot dog cart at the parties. He says this is a chance to showcase the great things happening in this city. The Jets, of course, won their last game of the season last night, 4-2 over Vancouver. They face Colorado in the first round of the playoffs with home ice advantage. I'll be back with more Manitoba news and more on the Jets in our next local news at 6:30.
Woohoo! I'm bandwagoning, got the jersey on.
I know, that's great. I love it. I'm so jealous.
All right, Heather and I will talk more sports throughout the morning. We also are going to get a breakdown because it has been a 3-decade drought since any Canadian team hoisted the Stanley Cup. Scott Reguera is actually going to have a special feature piece on the show for us this morning. That's going to be in the first hour. Now, to things other than hockey, in the first hour of the program, we're going to talk about how lethal pickup trucks and large SUVs are on the roads. There's a new report out that says the situation is deadly, especially for pedestrians and cyclists. So we'll find out more about the data that's behind it. Stay tuned. World Report is next.
On Cue with Tom Power. Over 3 nights, Noah Khan just played to 60,000 people in Toronto, but it was just a few years ago that he was stuck at his parents' farm trying to figure out how to keep going. In a Canadian exclusive interview, Noah Khan will be here to tell you how he did it. I ain't proud of all the punches that I've thrown. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
World Report. Good morning, I'm Kayla Hounsell in Halifax. We begin in the Middle East and mounting concerns over a volatile region on edge. Residents of the Iranian city of Isfahan captured what appears to be explosions on video. They occurred near a military site there. The U.S. believes the overnight attack to be Israel's retaliation for last weekend's missile attack by Iran. Chris Brown is in Jerusalem with the very latest.
A witness on the ground in the Iranian city of Isfahan posted on social media that he had heard sounds of explosions and air defenses being fired, but that nothing on the ground was hit. There are many competing narratives, but initially, Iranian state media said 3 drones were intercepted and shot down. Isfahan hosts a major Iranian military base, and there are also several nuclear sites in the area. Iranian media is reporting those facilities are unharmed. Other Iranian reports suggest the drones were in fact short-range quadcopters launched from relatively nearby and not a long-range craft that would have flown from Israel. Reuters news agency quoted an Iranian official as saying they don't know who launched the drones, nor are there any plans for retaliation. Israel has been under pressure from the United States not to respond to Iran's attack last weekend that saw it fire more than 300 rockets and other projectiles, an attack that Iran claims was in response to Israel's destruction of its consulate building in Syria. The fact Iran appears to be downplaying this latest incident indicates its government may want to see an end to the cycle of strike and counterstrike, which, if so, will come as a relief to many in this region and far beyond. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
And all of this is generating a lot of international reaction, and as expected, it's mixed. Dominic Velitis has that story.
Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Melanie Joly, is among the first to comment on Israel's apparent strike on Iran. In a post on X, she says Global Affairs Canada is monitoring the situation closely and that it would be addressed along with her G7 counterparts who are currently meeting in Italy. Britain's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak describes the strike as a significant escalation and one that is not in anyone's interest. Meanwhile, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, is urging restraint.
It is absolutely necessary that the region stays stable and that all sides refrain from further action.
There are similar words from France's Deputy Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot, who is calling for all actors for de-escalation and restraint. In the Middle East, Oman, which has acted as a mediator in Gaza, is condemning Israel's apparent attack, while Egypt says it's deeply concerned about the continued mutual escalation between Israel and Iran and warns of the consequences of expanding conflict and instability in the Middle East. Word too this morning from China, with Beijing announcing it opposes any escalating tensions in the region. Finally, the shortest statement of the day so far has come from Israel's hard-right minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. On the social media platform X, he posted a single word after Israel's reported strike: feeble. Dominic Velitis, CBC News, London.
Millions of Indians are heading to the polls today for phase 1 of a 6-week-long election process. The vote is seen as a referendum on Narendra Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. Modi is seeking a 3rd term as the country's leader. The CBC's Salima Shivji has more on the world's largest election from the state of Uttar Pradesh.
I'm at a polling booth in Muzaffarnagar, a town in northern India's Uttar Pradesh state, and there's a steady stream of voters, even under a hot sun, eager to cast their ballots. It feels good, it feels great, this first-time voter says. This is just day 1 of 7 staggered phases of voting in the biggest election the world has ever seen. Nearly 1 billion eligible voters. Uttar Pradesh alone has a population larger than most countries, Brazil or Pakistan, for example. It's also right in the so-called Hindu heartland of India, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is hugely popular. And Modi's base is devoted to him. I've come to see our God, Modi, this man says, at a recent rally.
There is no opposition for Modi. One and only Modi.
Dozens of opposition parties have banded together into an alliance to try to beat the prime minister. But polls suggest Modi is in a strong position to win his 3rd straight term. Still, there are concerns about what that could mean, especially with a recent crackdown, with federal investigative agencies acting against opposition leaders, even jailing some. Modi and his party say the agencies are acting independently. Rajiv Bhargava is a Delhi-based political scientist.
There is some fear that it will become even more dictatorial than it is. Already there are signs that there is a lot of arbitrary use of power.
The results will come in June in this consequential election, with India the fastest growing major economy and an emerging global power. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Muzaffarnagar, Uttar Pradesh.
Here at home, there's a recruiting hole in the Canadian Armed Forces, and officials say it's only going to get worse with the country's new defense policy. The policy proposes adding new equipment to the fleet, including submarines and long-range missiles. But as the CBC's Murray Brewster explains, the federal government is facing the prospect of not having anyone to operate them.
There's the price tag that comes with the new defense policy. Over the next several years, $8.1 billion. And then there's the personnel cost.
The planning figure that we're using is 14,500 into the regular force.
General Wayne Eyre is the country's chief of the defense staff.
And the capabilities that are in this policy and the capabilities that were announced in NORAD modernization require that. Otherwise, we're going to have to strip out those people from some other capability in the armed forces.
The problem is the military is already facing a deficit of 16,500 people, below its authorized strength, and a broken recruiting system. Richard Schmuka, a defense expert, says the stakes couldn't be much higher, with the federal government soon to take delivery of F-35 jets, Reaper drones, and eventually new frigates. And all of that was before last week's promise to add submarines and ground-based air defense systems. Schmuka says recruiting and holding on to an additional 30,000 people or more will be a monumental task.
The implementation of the increase of the forces is going to be really difficult, and it's going to be tough to see how they execute this.
The new defense policy promises to fix recruiting, but does not anticipate that will be accomplished for another 8 years. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
In British Columbia, more rescue equipment has been arriving for the new attempt to save a killer whale calf that has been trapped alone in a Vancouver Island lagoon for almost a month. A large send netting boat from Campbell River's Homelco First Nation has arrived for the continued rescue operation efforts. Last Friday's attempt involved more than 50 people using boats, nets, and drones. It's expected to be another difficult wildfire season across this country. An unusually warm winter is fueling those concerns, especially in the Northwest Territories, which saw the largest evacuation in its history last summer. In their first briefing of the season, wildfire officials are predicting another summer of drought, and as Kate Kyle tells us, they're getting prepared.
So there's a lot of fuel there, a lot of forest that has not burnt yet.
Garth Walbridge isn't taking any chances. All fall and winter, he's been removing brush from around his home on Pontoon Lake.
We could have just as bad, if not a worse, forest fire season this coming year.
Walbridge is among the thousands who fled the territory last summer, when nearly 70% of residents were displaced by wildfires. Officials say conditions going into the summer are worrying. Snowfall levels were lower than average across the south of the territory, and they're predicting less rain than usual in the coming months. Richard Olson is a territorial manager of wildfire operations.
Ultimately, that means we're going into a third season of drought.
To be ready, the department is starting firefighter training early. They're monitoring holdover fires from the air with infrared scanners and ramping up fire smarting campaigns. Mike Westwick is the manager of wildfire prevention and mitigation.
Really encouraging and appealing to people's personal responsibility every step of the way.
Officials say the territory could catch a break in August when the dry El Niño weather patterns are predicted to shift, but rainfall would need to be extreme to bring water levels in lakes and rivers back to normal. Kate Kyle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Kayla Hounsell. This is CBC News.
Well, good morning, everyone. We made it to Friday. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on Information Radio. Our team is live downtown on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. We'll get into the weather forecast in a moment. Looks very similar to yesterday. This hour on the show, we've got a lot of stories about sports. First of all, how something as simple as a mesh basketball net can make a huge difference on an outdoor court. Basketball Manitoba is going to share how you can get a free net for your community court, so stay tuned for that. In addition, if you're watching on YouTube, I am completely biased. when it comes to who I'm cheering for. The Jets begin their run for the Stanley Cup this weekend. Will they or one of the other teams in the playoffs for the NHL finally break a 30-year drought? Scott Reguer with a special report to set up the playoffs this morning. He will join us in this half hour. With other news, Heather Wells is here with headlines.
Good morning. Well, people will gather today for the funeral of a firefighter. The death of Preston Heinbigner has sparked calls for more mental health supports. The 40-year-old died by suicide. Friends and colleagues tell CBC he had been struggling with PTSD. Former firefighter Josh Clausen was a peer support coordinator for the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service. He still teaches a mental health readiness program. And Clausen says help is available but can be difficult to access. We're going to hear from him coming up. And the daughter of an Indigenous woman who died at Winnipeg's Grace Hospital is now suing. Jean Kimash died about 4 days after seeking care at the hospital in April of 2022. The 68-year-old's daughter alleges her mother's race factored into what she says was the negligent medical care that caused her death. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells in our news department this morning. Remember, anything you hear on the air, you can always find more online as well in addition, so cbc.ca/Manitoba. Abby brought me food today. Corey Funk. Good morning, you guys.
It was so good. It was the perfect way to start the day.
Right? Mm-hmm. I did. I shared. Abby.
Comfort food.
Do you know what I love about this? Can you all see this on YouTube maybe? Where's
the
my
bag
camera?
was full, Marcy.
All right, there's only 4 left. You're kind of calling these like Nigerian Timbits, a little bit less sweet.
It's more, I call it the Puff Puffs.
Puff Puffs. I am a huge fan of the Puff Puff. It tastes like my Baba's Donuts, too, like comfort food knows no borders. I love that.
Do you see me opening a food truck selling this summer?
I'll come.
Okay.
I'll be there. Actually, while I stuff this Puff Puff in my face, why don't you tell us what the weather's going to be like?
Yeah, right now in Winnipeg, we are at -1 under cloudy skies. And today we'll be expecting mainly cloudy conditions with period of snow starting very soon. The wind will initially be coming from the west and gradually shifting to the northwest. And it's going to be a gusty one throughout the day. Now, despite the chill we'll be feeling today, the temperature will hover around 0 degrees. And if we look towards the night period, those light snow we're going to be seeing will then be tapering off, giving way to some clear skies. And I'll call it a perfect night to just chill at home with a hot cup of tea, a hot cup of a cup of cocoa, and some pop-off that I made. But if we look at tomorrow, we've been. It looks like the mid part of the week has been, more like snow, rain. Looking at just picking into Saturday, it's promising to be brighter days. The sky is going to be bright. We're going to have lots of sunshine, and we'll just jump to 10. So that's really something to look forward to. But right now in Winnipeg, light snow is about to begin over Winnipeg throughout this morning, and then it's going to be continuing through the day, and we will be getting to a high of 0.
Let's dump it in your coffee now, Corey.
I know it's.
Oh my goodness.
I'm a dipper. I'm a dunker.
Oh, okay. You swallow it back. Someone once told me that eating on the radio is the worst thing ever, but eating on television is great because you can see how much we're enjoying this. So
it's great.
We're a hybrid now.
Yeah,
we're
hybrid.
a hybrid. That's our excuse. We won't eat all morning, we promise.
But don't eat and drive.
We won't be eating all morning on mic, we promise. However, let's talk about driving and walking and rolling. How is the commute?
Yeah, I would say overall fairly smooth out there. Haven't heard any major issues. I will say because it dipped down a little bit below 0 overnight, you could tell that there was a bit of a thin layer of ice out there when I hopped on my bike this morning to come here. So I had to bike a little bit slower. So just careful out there. Maybe give yourself just to start a little bit more time braking because it might be a little bit icy, especially on those side roads. So look out for that. But highways look okay so far. But if you do see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
So good. Well, as I mentioned, a new program is looking to improve outdoor basketball courts around our city. Up to Speed host Faith Lundell spoke about it with Basketball Manitoba yesterday.
It is a sound basketball lovers are longing for, a pickup game on an outdoor court. But do you know what sounds even better? Nothing but net. Basketball Manitoba wants to make sure that sound is heard across the province. Adam Wedlake is Executive Director of Basketball Manitoba. Their Nothing But Nets campaign is back for 2024. You heard that sound, and I saw a humongous smile on your face there. I mean, how do those sounds make you feel, especially on a day like this?
That's pure poetry to us. That's the sound of success, and the swish sound is something that any basketball player, experienced or not, knows that that's the sound of good things coming. So that's amazing. Love it.
Is there an outdoor court somewhere that's I guess special to you or is meaningful to you?
Oh, there's so many of them. When I grew up, this is going way back here, we really struggled as a young guy in the community to find an outdoor court that was suitable for us or safe or accessible or whatever. It's completely changed over the last generation here, and it's amazing the number of courts that are out there. We have record of almost 700 hoops in Manitoba alone here, outdoor courts that are free to access. There's no cost, there's no barriers, no nothing to not have you out there. And that's probably 50 courts, I'm guessing, when I was younger.
Yeah.
So it's significant growth, but now we're here to add a little more zip to the courts with a free mesh for as many public courts as we can get out in Manitoba here.
So the Nothing But Nets campaign, I mean, what are you hoping for? Are you hoping to have nets for those 700 courts?
Yeah, this is a sort of a carryover from the pandemic years. 4 years ago, we started this actually when we were in the mode of everything being locked down, shut down, especially indoor spaces with our basketball predominantly being played indoors. And it was that summer of 2020 that everybody was not knowing what's going on, even the summer of 2021 when we launched this, that we were doing more and more outdoor basketball because it was a safer time, a safer space for everybody to still get out and be active. But a lot of courts out there, the rim and the backboards, those are typically metal, those last forever, but the net or the mesh that hangs from the rims usually has only a couple of years shelf life of hanging there in our climate and weather and sun and all that. And so those definitely need changing and freshening up every couple of years. And so since we launched this in 2021, we've done almost 400 of the 700 hoops have been equipped or supplied with nets. But like I said, those only last about 2-3 seasons. And so it's sort of an ongoing cycle where we still have about 250 hoops out in Manitoba that don't have anything that we know of the hoop exists, but we just haven't got a net for it just yet. So I was excited to be back doing this again for another year.
I mean, on the surface, a net looks just like a net around the hoop there, but there actually is a difference in there. Talk more about why having a net on a loop that is in a public court, all those three things. Why is that important? Why is that the holy trinity?
Well, it's I guess for somebody say that maybe not familiar with basketball, I would say equate this to having a hockey net. Well, they call it a net for a reason, but imagine a hockey net without a net, and it's just the bars, just the frame. Imagine a soccer net without a mesh on the back, and really that's the same idea that illustrates with sound and visual indication that the ball, in our case, did actually go through the rim, and so you see that the movement of the net and the sound of the swish. Without that, it's a mystery sometimes whether that ball was scored or not. And so, and it just adds to that. It's a relatively low cost addition, but it definitely, as a player, it definitely makes, I think, a significant difference in the enjoyment and for people coming back. And that's what we're really all about, is getting more and more people engaged and active in our sport. And if this is one thing we can do to help engage a few more out there that may not be, that's for us, it's a great investment.
And probably reduces the risk of conflict because it's a lot more obvious.
Perhaps, yes.
I know you, Basketball Manitoba runs a lot of indoor basketball programs. Talk about why supporting unorganized basketball, particularly in community spaces, is as or equally important.
It could be almost even more important because a lot of times the first time people get involved with our sport is very casual, and it could be in the playground or even on their driveway with a net on their garage or on a post on their driveway. And so this is a lot of times where the love of basketball grows. It could be a first time involvement because again, there's very little barrier. There's no cost to participate on any of these or get on any of these courts that I'm mentioning. because these are all public spaces, typically in a park or on a school division property or a recreation center of some sort. So it's all public spaces. Typically, of course, we don't encourage anything after to respect sound and noise bylaws, to be respectful of the neighborhood. But throughout the day, throughout the summers, this is where basketball, the love of the game really grows, and people can play and enjoy the game as much as they possibly can. And just the culture of the sport is really where it flourishes.
You need the satisfying swish, right? Otherwise, when the ball bounces around the rim, what's the payoff? I love that. Adam Wedlake, there in conversation with Up to Speed host Faith Fundal. Adam is the executive director of Basketball Manitoba. For more information on the Nothing But Nets campaign, and if you can help out, check out basketballmanitoba.ca.
I got you, babe. They say I love won't play.
You know that tune. It's a song you might associate with the movie Groundhog Day, and it could also be the soundtrack for Canadian hockey fans. 31 years have now passed since a team from this country won the Stanley Cup. And with the NHL playoffs starting this weekend, Scott Regier of CBC Sports is here to tell us whether the song will remain the same. Hello.
Hey, Marcy.
So just give us a sense of this. I mean, how long has it been since Canada had a cup winner? I mentioned in years, but give us the context.
Well, a completely different world, right? Back in the 93, when the Habs claimed the country's last cup. On top of the music charts, we had Whitney Houston. On top of the political world, for a time at least, Prime Minister Kim Campbell. And in sports, Joe Carter was busy touching them all, helping the Blue Jays win their last World Series. On the ice, before the NHL assigned geographic names to its divisions and conferences, the Habs, they were busy navigating their way out of the Adams division and then the Wales Conference before they eventually beat the best the Campbell Conference had to offer, the LA Kings in the final. That said, Marcy, Montreal had fewer teams to beat out. The NHL, which has 32 teams now, only had 24 clubs, and 3 of those, the Quebec Nordiques, Hartford Whalers, and Minnesota North Stars, no longer around, of course. So, yeah, a lot has changed in the past few decades.
I know that I feel like we have to talk about this every year until we break this drought, but what is your sense in 2024 about why it has been so long?
Well, remember, around the time Montreal won that last cup, the NHL introduced unrestricted free agency, which means players, once they've honored their entry-level contracts, are free to choose their next club without compensation required to go to their original team. The list of the stars, Jets fans know this well enough, drafted by Canadian clubs who have since moved south of the border when they became free agents, is a lengthy one. Yeah, look at the Calgary Flames, for instance. A couple of years ago, Marcy, they were legitimate cup contenders. Then their 2 best players, Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk, signed or threatened to sign free agent deals with American teams, eventually left the Flames, and now Calgary's very much on the outside of the playoffs looking in. The reality is many players, they're given the choice of where to play. They prefer the lower taxes, warmer weather, and less intense media scrutiny you get when you're based in a U.S. market. Obviously, part of this was down to luck, this Canadian Cup drought, because the Flames, Oilers, and Canucks, they all got to a Game 7 in a Stanley Cup final before ultimately falling in that deciding game. All
right. We know Winnipeg's in this, but to elaborate, who are Canada's hopes this time around?
Well, alongside the Jets, we have Toronto, Edmonton, and Vancouver. So 4 of the 7 Canadian clubs, most of them made it through. That's 1 more than last season, and a sight better, Marcy, than what we had in 2016 when no Canadian team at all made the playoffs. So things appear to be improving, and best of all, each club involved this time around can make a pretty solid claim to winning it all. The Jets are a great example. They already boasted a solid core, and then they brought in quality forwards Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli at the trade deadline, and very nearly won their division. We know they boast probably the best goalie in the world, one of the top 2, maybe with Vasilevsky, in Connor Hellebuck. And the Jets also under Rick Bowness play structured playoff-style hockey, right? So in Colorado, I mean, it's a tough first-round opponent. The Avalanche won the Cup just a couple of years ago, but I think Winnipeg, who beat the Avalanche, remember, just last week, 7-0, to send a message, I think they're ready to send another message.
Okay, let's talk about the Leafs. Got to talk about the Maple Leafs. They will play an old foe in the first round, right?
Yeah, and with a 55-year Stanley Cup drought, Marcy, the longest of any franchise, the Leafs have assembled a bit of a list of old foes. But there was one team that haunts them like no other, and that's the Boston Bruins. This will be the fourth opening round meeting between the Bruins and Leafs in the past decade. The previous three all went the distance. They all ended the same way. Not good for those who support white and blue. Blogger James Price is the host of TO Sports Talk.
Hockey playoffs are a crazy thing. You never really know what's going to happen. Right now knowing we're playing the Bruins again, and having this Leafs team never been able to beat the damn Bruins in a playoff series, and they've always gone to 7, and they always hurt. Leaf fans, how you feeling? Because I'm not ready for this again.
I think that sums up Toronto sports hanks pretty well. And I do have a very hard time seeing the Leafs, with their once again mediocre defense, winning this series.
It leaves the Canucks and the Oilers then. How do you like their chances?
Well, of all the Canadian teams, Marcy, Edmonton's given the best odds right now of winning it all. They did come the closest last year, bowing out to the eventual champs, as the Jets did, to the Vegas Golden Knights for the Oilers in the second round. The post-mortem at that time determined the Oilers were not as deep as Vegas and that their goalie, Stuart Skinner, was fatigued and not at his best. So this season, Edmonton brought in battle-hardened forwards Corey Perry and Adam Henrique to improve their depth and better manage Skinner's minutes so that he's hopefully fresh and ready to go. On the basis of skill alone, no team north or south of the border matches the Oilers, with Connor McDavid the obvious star amongst their stars. They are worthy Cup favorites. Meantime, the Canucks, being honest, I think they should be happy to be here. COVID bubble seasons aside, they haven't made the playoffs in close to a decade. Elite talent for sure. Forward Elias Pettersson, defender Quinn Hughes, and their goalie Thatcher Demko. They've always had the skill, but a little like the Leafs, Marcy, they have not had structure. Enter likely Coach of the Year Rick Tocchet. After clinching their division earlier this week, his message was the same as it was way back in training camp.
You know, the crest means a lot to me, and the emblem on the front more than the back, and I think a lot of guys have bought into that. You know, we try not to preach individualism around here. It's good. You know, it's good for guys that get accolades and 100 points, some guys 40 goals. That's all great, don't get me wrong, but it's all about the crest, and that's what wins in the playoffs.
It's a message the Canucks have really embraced, and I think, Marcy, unless they come up against Edmonton in the postseason, they're going to go on a very long run.
No one wants a run. Everyone wants the Cup. How long? Will Vancouver or one of the other teams, do you think this will be the year that they'll break the drought?
Yeah, listen, yes, I do. Song remaining the same and all. Vancouver, Winnipeg, and Edmonton, they all have stars in every position. They're all well coached. They're all able to win the tight-checking, rough-and-tumble series typical of the postseason. The Leafs I'm less sure about, Marcy. I do believe it's the Oilers, though, who are going to end Canada's 31-year wait for a Stanley Cup, maybe meeting the Jets along the way. If so, we may see Gary Bettman hand over this country's most coveted sports trophy on Canadian ice for the first time since he took over. Remember, Bettman's first year in charge was, coincidentally or not, the same year Canada last won the Cup.
I'm going to leave that there for hockey fans.
Good idea.
All right, thank you, Scott.
You bet.
Scott Reguer, of course, joins us for Morning Sports, and he's been off the regular column, and now you know why. He's giving us some special coverage ahead of the Stanley Cup playoffs. He's a journalist, of course, here with us at CBC. Want to mention a couple of things. We're going to hear more about the game last night, the Jets game. We did win 4-2 over Vancouver. Heather will have analysis in the news, but how fun was it to watch the guys that were brought up for the game to score some of their first points in the NHL, an assist in one case for Brad Lambert, and just some really, really pretty goals last night. I am completely biased during playoffs. Yes, we're wearing white today as we get ready. Now, speaking of which, the Jets also now confirm, we know that the first game against Colorado Avalanche, their series opens Sunday. So Sunday is game one, and it will start just after 6 o'clock our time. If you have any problems on the drive this morning, now that it's 6:29 a.m., let us know, 788-3093, whether or not it's slick out there or not. When we're right around, the zero mark, sometimes it can be tricky, and we are at -1 in Winnipeg. But 788-3093 is that traffic line. Coming up, as always, on the program, we have business news. Crystal Ramlikan is going to join us this morning. And today she has a couple of special reports. One of them is about gas prices. So stay tuned. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, we've got a little bit of light snow in Winnipeg, and that snow will stay with us through the day, ending this evening. The wind is going to pick up, northwest 40 gusting to 60. You'll feel that chill. A high today of 0, but sunny and warmer for the weekend. A former Winnipeg firefighter says the nature and repetition of helping other people in crisis is taking a toll on first responders. Earlier this month, firefighter Preston Heinbigner died by suicide. He was just 40 years old. Josh Clausen used to be a peer support coordinator for the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service. He still teaches a mental health course. Clausen was diagnosed and treated for PTSD before leaving the job in 2020 after 17 years.
What I thought was normal was not healthy. And I think that's a similar story for a lot of firefighters and paramedics and first responders, is we compare ourselves to each other and we think, oh, we're doing all right relative to each other. But when you actually step back, you just realize how much this has affected you.
The United Firefighters of Winnipeg is calling for more capacity to be added to the WFPS Behavioral Health Unit so members can get access to more timely mental health care. A woman was in critical condition at Last Word after being hit by a semi. It happened around 7 last night on Henderson Highway near Layton. Police say the woman was a pedestrian. The driver of the semi remained on the scene. There is no confirmation that Israel is responsible, but there have been multiple explosions overnight near a military base in Iran. The Iranian military reports 3 drones were shot down near a military facility and a nuclear site in central Iran. No damage or fatalities are being reported. This follows Iran's unprecedented missile assault on Israel last weekend, and it has the global community concerned about a further escalation of violence in the Middle East. You can hear the latest on this story as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Manitoba's interim Liberal leader accuses the NDP government of being negligent with the provincial nominee program. Cindy Lamoureux says she has had hundreds of complaints from people waiting for their applications to be accepted. Lamoureux hasn't raised the issue with the government.
A lot of these people who are bringing forward these concerns, they're quite nervous. They are very sensitive topics. They don't want whether they can stay here in Manitoba, their work permits, their study permits to be disqualified out of us bringing it forward.
Lamoureux says the nominee program ran smoothly under the previous Tory government. Now she says applicants are waiting up to 11 months with no updates. Yesterday, the Conservatives demanded the resignation of Labour and Immigration Minister Malaya Marcelino. They distributed a letter accusing the minister of threatening people who have participated in protests over immigration delays. Marcelino denies she threatened anyone. The daughter of an Indigenous woman who died at Winnipeg's Grace Hospital is now suing. Jean Kimash died about 4 days after seeking care at the hospital in April 2022. The 68-year-old's daughter alleges her mother's race factored into what she says was the negligent medical care that caused her death. She is suing the hospital, the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, 2 doctors, and 2 nurses. The suit says staff failed to reassess and monitor Kimash, who was experiencing an extreme shortness of breath. The lawsuit says one nurse put wrist restraints on Kimash just hours before she died. The WRHA declined comment on the lawsuit. None of the allegations have been proven in court. Well, the Winnipeg Jets are set for the playoffs after wrapping up their season with a win last night. Winnipeg businesses are also hoping for a win, expecting a lot more foot traffic as playoff hockey begins, launching those whiteout street parties. Local public eatery on Gary Street expects to be packed on Sunday. Bartender Lucas Preciado is looking forward to the playoff biz.
It's definitely going to make this place go off the chain for busyness. I think that it's going to put some money in all our pockets as well. So no complaints on my end. I'm sure my coworker is going to be just as happy to serve everybody as well.
Presidio says he hopes the Jets can make a lengthy run this year. Well, they certainly are starting off on the right note.
Here's Velarde, waits, scores!
Gabriel Velarde in the first period on TSN as the Jets doubled Vancouver 4-2 last night. 8 straight wins for the Jets. And assisting on that goal, Brad Lambert, just called up from the Moose. Scoring the game winner, Nikita Chibrikov, also up from the Moose with his first ever NHL goal. Coach Rick Bowness credits Manitoba Moose coaching for preparing the 2 young players, and he credits his players for this strong finish to the season.
To play the way we play is hard. There's no question it's hard. It's frustrating to play against, and I think our players take great pride in that when they're talking to their friends around the league that, geez, we hate playing you guys. You're so hard to play against. I think that's extra motivation for our players, but it all comes from them. They're committed to it.
And that's not all. The Jets win the Jennings Trophy as the only team in the NHL having allowed under 200 goals this season. Playoffs begin Sunday night. The Jets hosting Colorado in the first round. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
So you remember to wear your white Jets shirt.
I did.
I remembered my jersey. All the guys forgot. Apparently, they are cheering for Molson Canadian Beer, the Bombers, Lotus Peace and Love,
Oh, that's nice.
and camping. That's what their outfits
I'm wearing
represent.
green plaid to represent the checker-like battle that is the playoffs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good try.
Good try.
It's
there.
deep. It's really, poetic.
Well, you know what? We'll be feeling peace and love as we win. And, I mean, you're representing over there in the studio another Winnipeg sports team, so you can't. It's okay.
Yeah.
No, you should have worn your shirt.
I should have. I have a nice old school one at home,
Do
too.
you?
Yeah, like a proper old school Jets one.
You know what? That's one of my favorite things. I love seeing how people dress up and enjoy this time of year and all that stuff. But I also like to see what sort of jerseys show up because people do collect them and keep them. And yeah, so we'll be seeing lots of that. All right, let's get into the weather forecast, a regional forecast from Abby Adiemi.
Good morning once again. -1 under cloudy skies here in Winnipeg. Today's forecast brings in more clouds with light snow starting very soon. Now you need to watch out for shifting winds from the west, which will then be switching later, the direction later. Now despite the wind chill that you'll be feeling, will be reaching a high of 0 today. Now today expect the light snow will be seen to taper off, leaving behind clearing skies. Now for folks in the north, I missed this part earlier. The warnings we had yesterday and the day before has all ended, so it's just the after effects and the clearing to happen. Heading west to Brandon, it's currently -3 with light snow. Expect that period of light snow throughout the day with that northwest winds that's also going to be gusting, because that's what the condition would look like all the regions in the southern part of the province today. Brandon is going to be reaching a high of 2 degrees. Moving to the north, Thompson is currently at -8, seeing some light snow at the moment. Now the snow will be ending sometime in the morning, followed by clearing skies, and then the highs will see a high of 1. Further north in Churchill, it's -12, mostly cloudy conditions. We'll be seeing more of like a clearing day, like a clear day today, and then the wind will become kind of light in the afternoon, and you get to a high of -6. Down in Dauphin, it's currently -4 with light snow. Expect the snow to end late in the afternoon, leaving behind cloudy conditions with around 2 centimeters accumulation, and we'll be seeing a high of +1. Gimli and Steinbach both at -2, heading to a high of 1. And finally, Morris, it's -3 with cloudy conditions. The Pembina Valley region can expect periods of light snow starting this morning, with winds from the west shifting to the northwest, and it's also going to be gusty, and then you'll see a high of 1. Right now, Winnipeg, light snow is about to begin over the city throughout this morning and continuing throughout the day, ending this evening, and today's high is 0.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Very similar today to yesterday here in the city. Corey Funk.
Had to put mitts back on my little guy, and he was not happy about it.
Oh.
He was like, what are these things? I was able to go out and use my hands, and I got to put mitts back on. What are you doing to me?
Yeah, he's not the only one that feels that way.
Yeah. But really, it's been a quiet commute overall so far, because we've dipped below 0. Might be a little slippery out there. Felt a little, I could see a little layer of the ice when I hopped on my bike this morning. So careful out there. Let me know what you are seeing. Is it slippery? I'd love to hear from you if it is. Give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, it is time for business news with Crystalie Ramlakan, who joins us via Zoom. Hello, Crystalie.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with gas prices. They've been rising across a lot of the country this week. What is behind the surge? Just time of year or?
Yeah, you're right. That is true. So, prices jumped about 10 cents per liter in Ontario the other day. And in Quebec, gas is up roughly 12 cents per liter. But like you were just saying, paying more during the spring is actually quite normal as areas switch to more expensive summer gasoline. So winter gas is cheaper because it has higher butane levels, which is an inexpensive but volatile element which lowers the cost of fuel. And so refineries are actually required by law to switch to blends with lower butane for the summer since gas evaporates faster in warmer temperatures, causing smog and other environmental harms. So it's an expensive process and the cost is then transferred to customers. But this year, though, the jump is a little bit bigger because some refineries haven't recovered from their maintenance period yet, so they're not back at full tilt, adding to supply pressures. Now, some experts say prices should begin to fall between late May and July. But Marcy, looking forward, we asked Dan McTagg, who runs the fuel tracking website Gas Wizard, what we could expect later this summer.
We could have a very active season, hurricane season. We could see, refineries affected there. When you see these kind of things, you have to know that maybe we're looking at another premium of about 10 to 12 cents a liter, worst case scenario throughout much of the summer. So we could see average prices in Canada, coast to coast, move up 12 cents from where they are now to the $1.90 range. I think it'll stay there for a little while. I don't think we're going to see $2, but again, if geopolitical tensions take off, then that's a wild card that I cannot estimate.
Meanwhile, though, Western Canada is not experiencing the same level of gas price hikes. Suppliers, of course, vary across the country, resulting in different timelines for switching to summer blends. So much of the Western provinces have already made the switch, but didn't experience as much sticker shock because, they weren't getting as much of a discount from the winter blend as their Eastern counterparts.
I'll have to check the prices, actually, before the end of the report here in Winnipeg. Let's go to food, a food story today in business news. Why could seafood chain restaurant Red Lobster be in hot water?
Well, the business is eyeing Chapter 11 bankruptcy after an endless shrimp promotion sank the chain's bottom line. So Bloomberg is reporting the restaurant is considering filing for Chapter 11, which would allow the chain to stay open while it deals with its debts and reevaluates its long-term contracts and leases. The outlet reported that Fortress Investment Group, one of Red Lobster's key lenders, is also involved in current debt negotiations. And the chain recently added Jonathan Tibbis as its new CEO, and Tibbis has worked with other restaurant chains to restructure their businesses. Now, last year, Red Lobster reported $11 million in operating losses following its Ultimate Endless Shrimp deal, which kind of backfired because it reeled in too many customers after the limited time promo became a permanent fixture on the menu last June. And the restaurant chain later reported $12.5 million in losses in the fourth quarter of last year. And earlier this year, Red Lobster's Thailand-based investor, Thai Union Group, also announced it was divesting from the company.
Anything where there's endless food in this economy, you got to wonder, right? Like, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Before we do markets this morning, why don't you tell us why TikTok is making news? They've started rolling out something that's going to rival Instagram?
Yes, they're trying to. So the social media app has started rolling out TikTok Notes to select Android and iOS users for download and limited testing in Australia and here in Canada. So you can write up headlines for your images above your captions, which is a feature that Instagram doesn't really offer. And the homepage seems divided into two sections, organized kind of like a Pinterest homepage, but with a smaller 2-column grid. And the app is very similar to Instagram, which is kind of a change from the usual. For years, Meta has been copying other social media platforms like TikTok with Reels and Snapchat with Stories. But with TikTok Notes, it looks like TikTok is the imitator this time.
What's going on in the markets?
In Europe, stock markets are falling, rounding off a week in which escalating tensions in the Middle East and interest rate expectations have been in focus. Germany, the UK and France are all down. In Asia, most major markets fell. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all down. Oil is down 46 cents to 82.27 US per barrel. Gold is down $2.50 to $2,395.70 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.02 of a cent to 72.62 cents US.
You are the best. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy. You too.
That's Crystal Ramlickham with our business news. And by the way, we did check out the range of prices in Winnipeg for gas this morning. So according to gas prices in Winnipeg, range from $1.29 to $1.39. And that's gasbuddy.com this morning. Well, if you watch us on YouTube, you might have seen Heather Wells come in as we were doing business news with an update here. What it is DSFM is closing École La Voie du Nord in Thompson today. So it's closed today, that school, and that is because of snow accumulation and also the forecast of more snow. So as Abby said, the warning has ended, but there's still more snow expected up in Thompson today. The snow should end this morning, but then we're going to see what happens tonight and then into tomorrow, some more flurries. So this is exactly how this reads from the school division. So closed. And I'm just going to check that this is correct because I'm just noting the date on it, unless they've misdated it. Because sometimes school divisions will send us things. So this certainly came this morning, but the date on it is still yesterday. And of course, we know the warnings ended. So let me get some clarification for you, and I'll get that momentarily. While we listen to a tune, one I'm looking forward to because someone has covered the weekend's blinding lights and added a little twang. This is Tebe's take on the weekend's classic.
I've been trying to call, I've been on my own for long enough. Maybe you can show me how to love. Maybe I'm going through withdrawals. You don't even have to do too much. You can turn me on with just a touch, baby. I look around and Sin City's cold and empty. No one's around to judge me. I can't see clearly when you're gone. And I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. I said, ooh, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I trust. Hey, hey, hey. Running out of time, 'cause I can see the sun light up the sky. So I hit the road in overdrive, baby. Oh, Sin City's cold and empty. No one's around to judge me. I can't see clearly when you're gone. And I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. I said, ooh, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I trust. I'm just walking by to let you know I can never say it
That was fun. Fun. That is a Tebe country cover and a country rendition of The Weeknd's Blinding Lights. And I don't know about you, but in the Weeknd version, sometimes I can't make out all the lyrics. So I'm grateful for that because I'm like, now I can go back and sing along to both of those versions properly. It is coming up to 7 o'clock. It's 10-2 right now. It's -1 in Winnipeg and there's light snow falling. So we do have a clarification. Yes, DSFM is closing École La Voie du Nord in Thompson today. So it is closed, and that is because of snow accumulation in the area. The warnings have ended up there, but they are digging out. You might have seen some of the images of what happened with that storm system in Manitoba. That's slow moving, dumped a lot of snow to the north, and of course here in southern Manitoba, mostly wet stuff. Although I can see some white stuff coming down right now, just dusting us like powdered sugar over Winnipeg currently. Well, next on the show, as you may have heard in the news, a woman was in critical condition at last word. That's after being hit by a semi last night on Henderson Highway. So we'll get any updates as we have them. But up next on the show, we're talking about a new report that's reminding people of the deadly collision risks for pedestrians and for cyclists. In particular, risks posed by large SUVs and pickups in urban areas. Now, this new study and data comes from the Coalition to Reduce Auto-Size Hazards, or CRASH. It's calling on all levels of government to address safety for pedestrians and cyclists because of the abundance of, quote, oversized vehicles now on roadways. To talk about it, one of the lead authors is with us. Albert Cole is a local road safety advocate, environmental lawyer, and founder of the group Community Bikeways. And he is, in fact, in Toronto. Good morning, Albert.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what makes pickups and large SUVs particularly dangerous in crashes involving pedestrians?
The latest research tells us that really zeroes in on the front end height and tells us that for every increase, and we've been seeing these increases on these vehicles, for every 10 centimeter or 4-inch increase on a front end height, that includes increases pedestrian fatality risk by about 22%. So if we look at, for example, a Ford F-150, and that's no longer one of the biggest pickups, their front ends are about 1.4 meters. The latest U.S. research based on comprehensive data across the country tells us that if we cap the front end height at 1.25 meters, that would save about 500 lives in the U.S. Every year. That's the U.S. alone. But if we cap the height at lower levels, we'd see incremental increases in the number of lives that could be saved. And the danger from these big vehicles and the big front end is really in the dynamic of a crash. A person is going to be hit in the upper body and in the head, as opposed to a smaller vehicle. In other words, a car will be taken out at the legs. I mean, the latter is not a pleasant experience, but what we know is the fatality risk from these high front ends, because it's hitting you in the upper body or in the head, is much heightened because of that front end. And the other thing that's, is just quite alarming is who is going to be most at risk? Well, we can figure that out easily. Well, children who are smaller, they're going to be hit in the upper body and in the head. And that's why, predictably, kids face 8 times greater risk of death if they're hit by one of these large vehicles compared to a conventional car. So that's the kind of figure that we shouldn't even have to elaborate on without getting government action.
You alluded to this. You said you were talking about the Ford truck you were mentioning and saying it's not even the biggest anymore. How have the vehicles and the construction of vehicles changed over the last 5 years through that lens?
Yeah, they keep getting bigger. I mean, we just see that everywhere in the dealerships and on our roads. These vehicles are getting bigger, they're getting heavier, and their front ends are getting higher, the front end grills. And this is a cautionary tale for us if we look at what's happening in the U.S. So in the U.S., the uptake and the trend to these bigger vehicles, heavier vehicles, higher vehicles, that trend has been quicker and more dramatic. But what we've also seen in the U.S. is that trend has coincided with a 50% increase in pedestrian deaths, which is simply shocking. So in Canada, we have an opportunity here. Like, we've been spending a lot of money in every city across Canada on road safety, but we really risk losing those benefits if we don't act now. And by acting, I mean curtailing the growth in these vehicles and the uptake of these vehicles. In Canada, pedestrian deaths have stayed disturbingly high, let's say, but at the same time have not been going up. The latter is, more of a positive view of it. However, we don't want to see those pedestrian deaths going up. And at the same time as this is happening, we know as pedestrian deaths have stayed about the same, the deaths of people inside vehicles has actually gone down. So we know that, design features make a difference, but they shouldn't just make a difference for people inside vehicles.
What do you say, Albert, to people who are listening this morning and saying it's not the vehicle, it's the driver? And no matter what we're driving, if we drove more safely, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but it shouldn't be prompting changes to the vehicles themselves.
It doesn't. This is really a case where the vehicle makes a difference. So if we can have the same driver in the same vehicle, in the different vehicles, that the driver in the bigger vehicle poses a bigger risk. So if they're, fumbling with their cell phones or doing something else, if they hit a pedestrian, the pedestrian is far more likely to die than if hit by a conventional car. So yes, absolutely. I mean, that's part of the equation. We want people to be cautious as drivers, but we know people make mistakes, and that's sort of the foundation of the Vision Zero plans, road safety plans, that people make mistakes. There shouldn't be a death penalty for making that mistake. But we know that these vehicles, so that's what we're comparing to. These big vehicles, relative to cars, are far more dangerous and far more likely to kill someone if they hit someone.
In our last minute here, I want to make sure I understand what specifically you're asking for of the federal government and also at the provincial and municipal levels. What are you proposing?
Yeah, quickly at the federal government, I mean, we're inundated by all this advertising, but it doesn't include safety warnings. People buying these vehicles don't know that these vehicles are more dangerous. Also, design features. We want these safety assessments to include pedestrian and cyclist safety in their safety assessments at the federal level. Provincially, driver's license, people don't know that these vehicles have a greater risk, but they should be trained. That should be incorporated into driver's license, better training on the risks that these bigger vehicles pose. And at the municipal level, we want to discourage these big vehicles, and one of the ways to do it was higher parking fees, and at the same time get cities to stop buying these big vehicles for things like gardening and functions that could be easily carried out by smaller vehicles.
Thank you for your time this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's Albert Cole, road safety advocate, environmental lawyer, and founder of the organization Community Bikeways. Interesting conversation. It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. More of interesting conversation to come. Right now, though, let's find out what's going on in the news. Heather Wells is here with headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's interim Liberal leader accuses the NDP government of being negligent with the provincial nominee program. Cindy Lamoureux says she has had hundreds of complaints from people waiting for their applications to be accepted. She says the nominee program ran smoothly under the previous PC government, and yesterday the Conservatives demanded the resignation of Labour and Immigration Minister Malaya Marcelino. And the daughter of an Indigenous woman who died at Winnipeg's Grace Hospital is now suing. Jean Kamash died about 4 days after seeking care at the hospital in April 2022. We'll hear more in our next local news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
-1 light snow in Winnipeg. The drive so far is okay, but be careful out there just in case, because when we're around the zero mark with this light snow falling, it's coming down pretty good. So you might just want to take it easy. TSFM has closed at Colevoie, Denore, and Thompson today. By the way, that is because of snow accumulation in that area. And if you see anything on the roadway, we should know about 788-3093. In the next hour of the show,
it's simply throwing a beanbag, and we've done that since we were kids.
You might have done it too, but we're going to hear how the sport of cornhole is growing in Manitoba. And to a serious discussion in the next hour of the show. Hockey hazing rituals have been top of mind since the arrest of 3 17-year-olds who allegedly assaulted 5 rookies. We'll talk to a survivor who says he was allegedly abused years ago. He's going to talk about the impact it's had on his life. He'll talk about finding strength in speaking out, how Theo Fleury has helped him, and why since he first shared his story in 2021, he says players from 5 generations have been contacting him to tell him about being hazed. Stay tuned.
Today on The Current.
I felt like I
I should, I don't know, not eat as much as I did.
Our words matter. That's the message from a new study that says teasing children about their weight puts them at higher risk of body issues as adults. How we talk about our bodies and what that means for our kids coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Kayla Hounsell in Halifax. We begin in the Middle East and mounting concerns over an escalation to a wider conflict. Residents of the Iranian city of Isfahan captured what appears to be explosions on video. They occurred near a military site there. The U.S. believes the overnight attack to be Israel's retaliation for last weekend's missile attack by Iran. But Tehran is downplaying it. Chris Brown is in Jerusalem with the latest.
A witness on the ground in the Iranian city of Isfahan posted on social media that he had heard sounds of explosions and air defenses being fired, but that nothing on the ground was hit. There are many competing narratives, but initially, Iranian state media said 3 drones were intercepted and shot down. Isfahan hosts a major Iranian military base, and there are also several nuclear sites in the area. Iranian media is reporting those facilities are unharmed. Other Iranian reports suggest the drones were in fact short-range quadcopters launched from relatively nearby and not a long-range craft that would have flown from Israel. Reuters news agency quoted an Iranian official as saying they don't know who launched the drones, nor are there any plans for retaliation. Israel has been under pressure from the United States not to respond to Iran's attack last weekend that saw it fire more than 300 rockets and other projectiles, an attack that Iran claims was in response to Israel's destruction of its consulate building in Syria. The fact Iran appears to be downplaying this latest incident indicates its government may want to see an end to the cycle of strike and counterstrike, which, if so, will come as a relief to many in this region and far beyond. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
And the attack in Iran became a focus for G7 foreign ministers meeting in Italy. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken declined to answer questions directly about the incident.
I'm not going to speak to that, except to say that the United States has not been involved in any offensive operations. What we're focused on, what the G7 is focused on, is our work to de-escalate from any potential conflict.
In a statement, the G7 ministers are urging Iran and Israel to avoid making the crisis worse and warning Tehran of possible new sanctions, saying they will hold Iran accountable for what they call its malicious and destabilizing actions in the Middle East. The G7 ministers are also calling for more action in addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The CBC's senior international correspondent, Margaret Evans, is following developments from London. Margaret, this appears to have been a measured attack by Israel. It has the capability to hit harder, so why wouldn't it?
Well, they're under enormous pressure not to do anything that would escalate the situation in the Middle East. People are incredibly concerned about a wider war. They're under pressure from the Americans to rein in their response, and also from countries like Jordan and Saudi Arabia. Those are countries that helped defend Israel against the Iranian attack, those missiles and drones sent towards Israel. But of course, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is under pressure from hawks within his own government and with hardliners to do more. Itamar Ben-Gvir, a hardliner in his government, the security minister, actually tweeted saying that the response had been, well, it was one word, feeble. So a lot of pressure, but it does seem that Israel is thus far trying to keep it to a minimum response.
And Iran so far has been downplaying the attack. What's its reason for that?
It's twofold in a sense. I think Iran also doesn't want to escalate the war. And after their attack on Israel, they said that they had signaled their intentions to partners in the region, trying to imply that their attack, which was, of course, a retaliation for an Israeli attack on an Iranian consulate in Syria, that their response was in self-defense, it was measured, and that they too were trying to respond in a measured way. By not admitting that this was an Israeli attack, Iran is signaling to its own population, in a sense, it could be a way of saving face.
The CBC's Margaret Evans in London. Margaret, thanks for this.
You're welcome.
Millions of Indians are heading to the polls today for phase 1 of a 6-week-long election process. The vote is seen as a referendum on Narendra Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. Modi is seeking a third term as the country's leader. The CBC's Salima Shifji has more on the world's largest election from the state of Uttar Pradesh.
This is just day 1 of 7 staggered phases of voting in the biggest election the world has ever seen. Nearly 1 billion eligible voters. Uttar Pradesh alone has a population larger than most countries, Brazil or Pakistan, for example. It's also right in the so-called Hindu heartland of India, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is hugely popular. I've come to see our God, Modi, this man says, at a recent rally. Dozens of opposition parties have banded together into an alliance to try to beat the Prime Minister. But polls suggest Modi is in a strong position to win his 3rd straight term. Still, there are concerns about what that could mean, especially with a recent crackdown, with federal investigative agencies acting against opposition leaders, even jailing some. Modi and his party say the agencies are acting independently. The results will come in June in this consequential election. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Muzaffarnagar, Uttar Pradesh.
Here at home, the federal health minister is accusing opposition leader Pierre Poilievre of misleading Canadians. Mark Holland says Poilievre isn't telling the truth about the government's plan for a national pharmacare program. Poilievre has been attacking this week's federal budget while keeping quiet about what programs he would cut if he was prime minister. Tom Perry reports.
This budget, just like this prime minister, are not worth the cost, and Conservatives will be voting no.
For more than an hour, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre stood in the House of Commons attacking the federal Liberals and their new budget. With nearly $53 billion in new spending, Poilievre says the government's plan will only drive the country further into debt. Poilievre, for the most part, hasn't said where he would cut or whether a Conservative government would maintain programs like dental care and pharmacare, which Poilievre says don't yet exist.
Poilievre on the budget.
But in a radio interview with City News, Poilievre took specific aim at the government's pharmacare policy, making this claim.
Most of your listeners already have coverage through their workplace. The pharmacare bill Trudeau's brought forward would ban that.
The government's legislation does not ban workplace insurance plans, and so far is only offering to cover contraceptives and some diabetes treatments.
It's the dishonesty to me that is so reprehensible.
Health Minister Mark Holland says if Poilievre is against pharmacare or dental care, he should just say it. Instead, Holland says the Conservative leader is using fake arguments and lies to mislead Canadians. Tom Perry, CBC News, Ottawa.
The opioid crisis has ravaged communities across Canada. Thunder Bay continues to be among those hit hardest in Ontario. But as the CBC's Sarah Law reports, those in recovery from addiction are using their lived experience to give back.
They find it easier to talk to us because we've been where they've been.
Nicole Lucas-McKenzie works at a drop-in center for Thunder Bay's most vulnerable. It's known as People Advocating for Change Through Empowerment, or PACE. Everyone who works there has faced addiction and other social challenges.
I was in active addiction for 12 years and I got sober. I've been 16 months sober now.
But advocates say the city needs more resources. PACE coordinator Kyle Arnold says when someone reaches out for help, there's a limited window to get it to them.
When they go to find services, they just get put on wait lists. A lot of the time, we're not able to help them within that window.
For 2 years, the Thunder Bay District Health Unit has seen the highest rate of opioid-related deaths in Ontario. Already this year, health officials believe 22 people have died from suspected drug-related deaths, after 132 suspected deaths last year. Georgina McKinnon is PACE's executive director. She says another challenge in Thunder Bay is the stigma.
A lot of people look at the clients that come here and think that they're worthless, and they're not.
Ontario's Ministry of Health says the province is spending an additional $400 million on mental health and addiction services. The Addictions Recovery Fund has added 500 recovery beds, with more than half slated for Northern Ontario, though it's unclear how many new beds will go to Thunder Bay. Sarah Law, CBC News, Thunder Bay, Ontario.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Kayla Hounsell. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. We've got light snow falling in downtown Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. This hour on a day where we're celebrating hockey, there's also another part of the story. Still ahead, shrouded in secrecy, we're going to get into the world of hockey hazing, which is sometimes passed off as tradition.
They call it the old boy and the new boy system at Notre Dame. It was set up, to the younger boys wanted to be there for a year so they could be vetted in and become an old boy. And unfortunately, that's a systemic problem. It creates more old boys to abuse the new boys that are coming in.
Todd Tisdale started sharing his story in 2021 about alleged abuse as a teenager in a hockey team in Saskatchewan. Today, his reaction to the arrest of 3 17-year-old Manitoba players. So stay tuned. That's a feature interview we're going to have for you between 7:30 and 8. Time right now is 7:11. In addition, we have, of course, a couple of other stories. Just to switch gears here, I want to mention that at 7:40, we also are going to be hearing from an Indigenous beadwork artist who's honoring the women in her life with her creations. So stay tuned for that. Right now, Heather Wells is in with other headlines.
Good morning. Well, people will gather later today for the funeral of a firefighter. The death of Preston Heinbigner has sparked calls for more mental health supports. We're going to hear from a former firefighter, Josh Clausen, who has been a peer support coordinator for the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service until he retired. He also suffered PTSD, and we'll hear from him. Winnipeg business owners are gearing up for whiteout street parties starting Sunday. Will Galt at Willie's Dogs is going to be setting up his hot dog cart at the parties for one home game during each round of the playoffs. And he says this is a chance for Winnipeg to show the great things happening in this city. We'll hear more from him, and we'll also hear some highlights from last night's last game of the season, ending it with a win, coming up at 7:30.
You know, Heather, I have to say, there's no denying that it brings excellent energy downtown.
Oh, there's such a buzz, right?
Yeah, there really is. So we'll see. And it looks like the forecast for Sunday, which is going to be the first game for the Jets against Colorado, as we've been mentioning, is going to be good. So, Abby, let's start with today, though, with the weather forecast.
Yeah, starting with today, we're currently at -2. We're seeing the light snow coming down. And if you look around, it's just whipping around. But the wind direction is actually shifting from the west to the northwest now. And it's occasionally gusting. Despite the chill you'll be feeling, we're going to be reaching a high of 0 today. Now tonight, the snow showers will definitely be tapering off, leaving clearing skies for us. And tomorrow, what that means is tomorrow we're going to see sunny skies return with temps around 10 degrees. I'll call it a perfect day for outdoors. Now Churchill is currently at -12 with skies clearing at the moment, and light winds will come later. Dauphin and Brandon both at -4 degrees with light snow, while Thompson sits at -9 with light snow also, which is ending sometime this morning. Gimli, Steinbach, Maurice all around -2 degrees, and they're seeing light snow with some gusty winds expected later. Winnipeg, expect light snow all day and then this evening, and we'll get to a high of 0.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Well, as Abby's been mentioning this morning, the warnings have ended after that system moved through, bringing snow, especially to northern Manitoba. However, there's a lot to dig out from. So to that end, DSFM has closed the École La Voie du Nord in Thompson. So École La Voie du Nord in Thompson is closed today, and that is because of snow accumulation. And dealing with that, let's get into what's happening on the commute this morning. Corey Funk?
Yes, down south here, it does seem fairly smooth overall. We're getting that light dusting of snow, maybe a little bit slippery on the roads. Haven't heard any calls about it yet. Noticed a little bit on my bike ride in this morning that there was a light dusting, maybe a little slick. But otherwise, if you see something else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. Seems like pretty smooth overall. 204-788-3093.
7:14 is the time right now, and it is a game that you might have played as a kid, tossing bean bags into a hole. That's as simple as cornhole is. Did you play it, Corey?
Oh, yeah. Actually, the other day when I was at the Winnipeg airport, they have cornhole up at the airport now.
Are you good at it?
I'm pretty good at it. It depends on how far away the
I'm looking for something to throw at you.
The thing is, yeah, exactly. And when I'm in the zone and I got a good partner, I can play pretty well.
The key is in the follow through, of course. Cornhole's growing apparently in Manitoba. Up first this half hour in February, Winnipegger Jeff Monday started Winnipeg West Cornhole League. Now about 30 players come together every week and they play the sport over at the St. James Legion on Portage Avenue. CBC Manitoba's community reporter Shanley Vidal and videographer Jason Empson recently visited.
So Jeff, this is a court,
yes.
Right? I don't think I've ever played cornhole, at least as an adult. I do remember throwing beanbags in gym class in elementary school.
Yep, we all did that.
It can't be that different.
No, it's not, other than it's a lot farther, right? So the boards are basically 27 feet apart from each other. A board's 4 feet long, so you have to throw the bag 30 feet to get it in the hole. So that's a lot farther than we would even do that normally in the backyard. So that's regulation is 27 feet apart, and a board's 2 feet by 4 feet, and then it's got a 6-inch hole.
Now, is there a technique for throwing?
There is.
Okay.
Well, there's many different techniques. So there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Okay.
The first thing is you get to step up to the edge of the board. So if you
Okay.
step over the line, that's a foul. So you have to have at least 1 foot behind the line when you release the bag. And then when you throw the bag, usually you get a good grip. And as you release it, you want your hand to come up and release flat. And then the bag will spin and land flat on the board.
So you're throwing underhanded.
Underhand,
Okay.
yeah.
This is actually really fun.
Yes, you touched
Right at the board.
Nice.
Is that a point?
Almost. Hi, I'm Jeff Monday. I'm with Winnipeg West Cornhole. You don't have to be a professional athlete to play cornhole. Anyone can play cornhole. It's simply throwing a beanbag. And we've done that since we were kids.
Tell me about how this league got started.
So everyone plays cornhole in their backyard or at the cottage or the campground. That's what I was doing last summer. And I saw cornhole on TV, and they said it was going to the Olympics. And I said, I'm going to go to the Olympics. So I joined a league. It's way out in West St. Paul, so I decided to start my own league here on the west side of the city in St. James.
What was it like for you when you discovered cornhole last summer? How did it go when you were playing?
I loved cornhole because I'm not going to get injured, and I'm competitive. So for me, it was fun to get out in the yard and throw bags against my friends and have some friendly competition. When I joined the league, it was quite different. I learned how some people can take it very seriously, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's just a fun night out with friends, usually a beer in your hand while you're playing, and it's just a great way to meet new people.
Speaking of meeting new people, there are some people playing together who are meeting for the first time. They're doing introductions. What exactly is going on?
Normally with cornhole, you play doubles a lot of times, and the way we've set our league up is we mix the partners every game. So that way everyone gets a chance to meet everyone else, and it makes it more social, a little bit less competitive, and just everyone's here just to have some fun and meet new people.
How excited are you to see it growing so much?
Oh, it's very exciting. My goal was just to try to grow the sport because it's so new in Manitoba. We only have the 3 registered leagues. In Ontario, they have 26 leagues already, and every other province is way bigger than Manitoba. So we are starting a bit late, but I think we're going to catch up real fast because it's so exciting to see the number of people coming out. We've established the MCA, or Manitoba Cornhole Association. We have a board of directors, and we are currently in the process of doing our bylaws and playing rules, and then we are organizing provincial championships for June 22nd.
My first name is Sherry, last name Liberg.
You came across the border, and I'm wondering why you and your husband wanted to come to Winnipeg.
My husband and I started out kind of as backyard player camping sort of thing, and we a year ago joined a league in Grafton, North Dakota, and we just got addicted from that. And so anyway, we've been playing. We can practice and play in our garage, and so we've had a good time doing that. A lot of date nights. We're always looking for tournaments, and we love to come up and play with our Canadian friends. Anybody can play cornhole. It's the one sport where you don't need to be super strong. Old ladies like me can play with an 18-year-old, or a 12-year-old kid can beat a 70-year-old man. And we play with some guys that are in their mid-70s, and they are lights out. Nice job.
So my name is Darren Funk. I own and operate the Eastman Cornhole League out of Steinbach, Manitoba. And together with me and Jeff Monday and Jason McNash, we started our 3 leagues in Manitoba, and we also run the Manitoba Cornhole Association. And we started this over the last year and a bit, and we're just trying to grow the sport in Manitoba and really catch up to some of the other provinces.
How do the points work?
1 point for having it on the board, and if it goes in the hole, that's 3 points. And hanging it on the end like that, that's still only 1 point. That's not 3 points. You got to get it all the way in. You have different shots like blocks and rolls and these cut shots when you can cut from right to left or left to right to try and get around other people's blocks when they try to keep you from getting points, right?
What got you into cornhole?
I was cleaning my grandfather's eavesdrops, and he come outside and he was like, "Look at this thing I found at the thrift store." And it was one of those cornhole board sets with the 3 holes up the middle. We started playing this game cornhole, and I was like, this is whatever. And then I threw the bag a few times, and I was like, man, this is actually kind of fun. It's a little bit challenging. I like this. So then I went home and I Googled, what is cornhole? And I found like the ACL, the American Cornhole League, who they do broadcasts on ESPN and stuff like that, and there's like huge cash prizes. So I've decided, hey, why can't I bring this up here? So I looked into it and found the league in Winnipeg and came out a couple times, and I was like, okay, this is great. This is awesome. I don't want to drive an hour to come play cornhole every week. I started up a league in my own area, and it's been great. So I still come out here every week, and now I just play more cornhole.
Fun, right? There is a sport for everyone. That was CBC Manitoba's community reporter, Shanley Vidal, and videographer Jason Emsom, if you want to check this out on YouTube, at the St. James Legion on Portage Avenue, a gathering of the Winnipeg West Cornhole League is what they were attending. It is, as you heard, one of 3 leagues in the province, and if you want to try it out, you can check out cornholecanada.ca.
We've all heard of dad jokes. We want you to tell us a mom joke. That's any joke a mom would love. The Winnipeg Comedy Festival and CBC have created the ultimate comedy contest. Send us your best joke and you could get the chance to tell it on Information Radio. The best 2 jokesters will then face off at a live taping of the debaters at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival and win an amazing prize pack. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
Good luck. Get those jokes coming in. Well, speaking of amazing prize packs, all week long we've been inviting you to tell us about what you're reading for a chance to win big bundles of books in honor of World Book Day, which is coming up next week. And if you're on YouTube, you're getting a special treat because I hereby declare that I'm about to read one of the entries to our book contest. And I'm guessing I look very formal, although I'm wearing my Jets jersey. I'm flanked right now by 2 Manitoba flags because, looks like I'm delivering the speech from the throne or something, because these are the prize packs, like huge baskets of books, right? So this one's all full of sports books, the one over my right shoulder, and this one over my left shoulder is all full of books by Canadian authors. So that's if you're watching on YouTube. But you have a chance to win, whether you're watching or listening this morning. So here's one of the entries. These baskets are courtesy of Share the Magic Book Program. It's It's a not-for-profit that collects new and gently used books and distributes them to disadvantaged communities in the province. So to enter, share your love of reading at win@cbc.ca, just like Jamie Bao did. Jamie Bao wrote in, "During a very dark time in my life, I was saved by Canadian author Louise Penny and her collection of Armand Gamache mystery novels. Her books were the only predictable place I could go at the end of the day, as they offered me a beautifully developed cast of recurring characters and a simple but compelling small-town murder. For 2 solid years, Louise's words were the only words in my brain, they're only words rather my brain could absorb as I tried to fall asleep. Books save people. I know this for sure. I would so love the Canadian author basket. I have a large dining room table that's big enough to hold it." Thank you so much for the entry, Jamie. I love that. Beautifully worded. And now I want to pick up that book. I don't know the Armand Gamache mystery novels. Maybe I'll get into it. So Jamie's entered. You can too. win@cbc.ca. You can also call and tell us about your book at 204-788-3205. Well, it is 7:25 a.m., and we'll have to leave the very formal backdrop behind me as we move into talking about morning sports. And Khalil Hassan Ali continues to be in for Scott Regehr today. Hi there.
Good morning, Marcy.
I watched that game last night. It was awesome. And my favorite thing was the memorable experience for the players that got, that were called up for the game.
Yeah. It's always a cool thing that kind of comes towards the end of a season, especially with the team going into the playoffs. So very memorable day for Nikita Chibrikov. He was able to pot his first goal in the league in his first NHL game, and it ended up being the game winner as well. So the 21-year-old in his first season in North America as well says it's something he's actually dreamt about for a very long time.
Yeah, it's like the dream which you start from the first steps on the ice and live with this every day. Like, I'm really excited and happy to be here. The first game winner goal this season for me. You can't believe it first seconds, then you sit on a bench and go to your mind and things it's happened. You're here and it's the first step of your dream. It starts.
And it started with a really cool celebration as well, looking at that on the highlights this morning. Now the slate has been wiped clean, Marcy. The focus shifts to Colorado, winning 4 games quicker than them. You mentioned the angst and excitement that you're feeling. I noticed also a beautiful white and blue jersey that you are wearing.
Yeah, I'm
too.
representing.
But are you going to be wearing that until Sunday's game? You got to wear it, right?
I don't know.
Wearing it.
I don't know. I'm not a year-round fan. I don't watch every
fair
game.
Weather fan. That's fine.
I'm a playoff fan. I will certainly watch every game. My husband and I love doing that. But I don't know. The jersey might need a wash in between because they're going to win. So.
Definitely.
There is that.
So we got to meet in front of the TV at 6 o'clock on Sunday. I'll bring the snacks.
Nice. I like it. All right, let's still talk other hockey news. The sale of the Arizona Coyotes is now official. What are some of the plans for the team, now playing in Utah?
Yeah, so we know the team is going to be playing out of the same arena as the Utah Jazz. So that is in Salt Lake City. And you might be wondering to yourself, if you've never been there, is it a viable NHL city? Well, there's close to 2 million people that live within a 30-minute drive of the arena. The area is also booming economically. The annual U.S. News and World Report graded Utah the #1 state in the country. This is because of sustained growth and heavy sustained growth over the last little while. And there's also minimal unemployment. The owner of the new team, Ryan Smith, he spoke to Sportsnet yesterday and said the deck plays into their hand.
We're starting a new franchise in Utah, and we get to start fresh, but we get this incredible team and this young team with assets and incredible people, and that's what we're most excited about. And that's really what we're acquiring. And, I think for everyone involved, it's a moment to go create something together. And, when in your career do you get to do this? This is phenomenal, and starting from a little bit more of a position of strength.
So the most important question you might be wondering is if people are actually going to be coming to the games. Well, 6,000 season ticket deposits came in within just 2 hours of the announcement coming down yesterday, Marcy.
We'll see if that lasts. What other sports action can we look forward to over the weekend?
Women's golf, it's their first major, I should say. Canadian Brooke Henderson, she shot under par yesterday. The men are playing in Hilton Head. CBC is going to be streaming and then broadcasting some track and field later on Saturday. And the Blue Jays kick off a 3-game set later today in San Diego.
Thank you. We'll be watching all of it. Take care.
Thank you so much, Marcy.
All right, Khalil Hassanali filling in for Scott Regehr this morning in sports. Distracted there for a moment, I apologize. We have two school issues to deal with. So first of all, DSFM has closed École La Voix du Nord in Thompson, and also in Thompson, all schools in the school district of Mystery Lake in Thompson are also closed. This is because of weather. Remember, what we experienced here down south was not what our friends up north got. Lots of snow fell over the last 3 days, so they're dealing with that. Cloudy and light flurries here in Winnipeg is what we've had. It's -2. If you want to reach us in traffic, 788-3093 is where you can update the drive or the commute if you're on foot. Coming up, we are going to hear from an Indigenous beadwork artist who is honoring the women in her life with her creations, specifically honoring her grandmother with her art. So we're going to hear from both of them in a very special story. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's -2. We have light snow falling, and this April snow will stay with us for much of the day, ending this evening. Getting windy today, and a high this afternoon of 0. Sunshine and warmer temperatures for the weekend. People will gather later today for the funeral of a firefighter. The death of Preston Heinbigner has sparked calls for more mental health supports. The 40-year-old died by suicide. His friends and colleagues tell CBC he had been struggling with PTSD. Former firefighter Josh Clausen was a peer support coordinator for the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service. He still teaches a mental health readiness program, and Clausen says help is available, but it can be difficult to access.
If you knew where the building was, what it would be like in counseling, all of those things, when you're struggling, you actually need it. All of those things that are just small pebbles appear as boulders, and they're the barriers that stop you from getting help. You don't know who to call. You don't know what the building is like.
The United Firefighters of Winnipeg says the addition of Behavioral Health Unit by the WFPS in 2021 is a positive step, but it says more capacity is needed to make sure members can get care in a timely fashion. Manitoba's interim Liberal leader has had hundreds of complaints since the NDP took office about delays with the provincial nominee program. Cindy Lamoureux says some people are on the verge of being disqualified because their work or study permits are about to expire. Lamoureux doesn't buy the immigration minister's stand of blaming the previous government.
Before the last election, I found that the program was running quite successfully. The provincial nominee program is something I'm quite familiar with. I have a large constituent base who use the provincial nominee program, and I believe that when this government formed government after the last election, that they were negligent of the program, and this has resulted in what's happening today.
Yesterday, the Conservatives demanded the resignation of Labour and Immigration Minister Malaya Marcelino. They distributed a letter accusing her of threatening people who have taken part in protests over immigration delays. Marcelino denies having threatened anyone. Well, less than a week after Iran's missile assault on Israel, there have been multiple explosions overnight near an Iranian military base. There has been no claim of responsibility from Israel, and at least for now, senior Iranian officials say there are no plans for retaliation. You can hear the latest on this story as well as worldwide reaction coming up on World Report at 8. A woman was in critical condition at Last Word after being hit by a semi. It happened around 7 last night on Henderson Highway near Layton. Winnipeg police say the driver of the semi remained on the scene. The daughter of an Indigenous woman who died at Winnipeg's Grace Hospital is now suing. Jean Kimash died about 4 days after seeking care at the hospital in April of 2022. The 68-year-old's daughter alleges her mother's race factored into what she says was the negligent medical care that caused her death. She is now suing the hospital, the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, 2 doctors, and 2 nurses. The suit says staff failed to reassess and monitor Kimash, who was experiencing an extreme shortness of breath. The lawsuit says one nurse put wrist restraints on Kimash just hours before she died. The WRHA has declined to comment on the lawsuit. None of the allegations have been proven in court. Winnipeg business owners are gearing up for whiteout street parties beginning Sunday. Will Galt runs Willie's Dogs and will be setting up his hot dog cart at the parties for one home game during each round of the playoffs. He says the Winnipeg Jets play is going to impact his fandom and his business.
The longer we can go definitely in the playoffs is not only good for them, but it's definitely good for us. And you know what, I think that's a great thing that they're doing. You know, I'm guaranteeing each vendor one home game because it gives a chance for Winnipeg to showcase all the different food trucks and different hot dog carts, and we have lots of great ones here.
Galt says this is the first time he's rolling out the cart for the street party. He says the rotating menu of vendors and food trucks will be a welcomed injection of funds for smaller businesses in Winnipeg. And the Jets are heading to the playoffs with a win. Chibrikov in the third period of TSN with the game-winning goal, his first ever NHL goal as the Jets beat Vancouver 4-2 in the final game of the regular season last night. Chibrikov and Brad Lambert were both just called up from the Manitoba Moose. Lambert got an assist last night. Chibrikov says he was nervous heading into action last night and says it was the start of his dream.
It's like the dream which you start from the first steps on the ice and live with this every day. I'm really excited and happy to be here.
Last night's was Winnipeg's 8th win in a row, and it sees the Jets match their franchise record of 52nd win of the season with most points in the Western Conference. And that's not all. The Jets also win the Jennings Trophy as the only team in the NHL having allowed under 200 goals this season. The playoffs begin Sunday night at 6. The Jets hosting Colorado in the first round. You can find more on that game and other news from Manitoba. All you have to do is head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Whoop, whoop. Keep on rolling.
Go Jets, go.
Yeah. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adiyemi with our regional forecast now.
-2 in the city with periods of light snow, a hidden high of 0 today. Brandon is at -4, heading to +2. Thompson at -9. Churchill at -12. Dauphin at -4, heading to high of +1. Gimli, Steinbach, Morris, all at -2 with light snow, highs of +1.
Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
And next on CBC, let's just touch the commute this morning. Corey Funk?
Yeah, really quiet overall. Might be a bit slippery with that dipping below zero, but if you see something going on, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Corey Funk and Abby Adiyemi. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to CBC's Information Radio. And next on the show, Vi Husin is honoring the women in her life through art. She's an Indigenous beadwork artist based here in Winnipeg. She's got a show on right now if you want to check it out over at Ace Art Inc. And Marshall Hodgins, who's an RRC Polytech student interning here at CBC, spoke with her.
Woven portraits of Métis women that I really look up to. So this one is Anita Stallion. She's a local drag performer who just has been holding down the drag community in Winnipeg for 30 years. She's amazing. She's our matriarch. And then on the far end, that's Janine Crouchy, who I talked about, my mentor. And then the one in the middle is my grandma. This was the very first one that I did, so it was a bit of an experiment, but I'm really proud of it. She's a real matriarch of our family, and I'm really proud of her, and I love her a lot. So together, this kind of creates a pantheon of Métis women that I really respect and that I really love. We weren't really raised with our culture. My grandma wasn't really raised with her culture either, so it's not like our family has, ancestral beadwork that we've inherited. It's not like we have a ton of that material culture to rely on or that inspires us. So I like to think of these as kind of like our family's new heirlooms in a way. I think part of the inspiration for these pieces was sort of like old oil paintings that hang on a family's mantelpiece or something like that, right? I'm not a painter, but I want to pay homage to my family and the people that I care about in that same sort of way. So I think this is sort of my variation on that. So I got into beadwork by kind of reconnecting with the culture, working at the Manitoba Métis Federation, hanging out at the Two-Spirit Michif Local, and then becoming a beadwork artist. I've had the opportunity to meet so many other amazing artists like Claire Johnson, Brianna Oversby, David Heinrichs, Janine, of course. Bronwyn Butterfield, Laura Brand, like it's really kind of a reciprocal process, I feel. Reconnecting led to beadwork, and beadwork has led me to further reconnection. Part of the reason why these are faces and these are names and they're in a gallery is because so much of Métis material culture is anonymous, right? Like so many of our grandmother's pieces, they never had names attached to them. Oftentimes they were sold and then they were exported and they were scattered. And so all of this beautiful, beautiful art, some of the most beautiful art in the world is anonymous. So none of these women's names or faces were recorded. And even in Métis history, we know the names of people like Gabe Dumont, Louis Riel, et cetera, et cetera. But despite the fact that we're a matriarchal culture, so few women have been recognized and given that platform. So this is sort of, I guess in my way, a way of like codifying Métis women's faces and names and putting them in like spaces like these, you know, in like institutions that haven't necessarily always thought of beadwork as an art form, rather as a craft or as an artifact, as a kind of way to assert the importance and the value and the beauty and the geniusness of Métis women.
Indigenous beadwork artist Vi Hussein. Now, Marshall also spoke to Vi's grandmother, Elma.
On my 90th birthday, I got this picture. I'm thankful, proud, wonderful girl, and just gets involved, like deeply involved. And I'm truly happy with it. It's kind and caring, all that you could ask for, you know.
Did Vi say anything to you about why she chose to do a portrait of you?
I think a lot of it had to do with getting into the Métis part of our life. And it just, well, we talked a lot like about my growing up and stuff like that. And it's nice to know that there is someone in this generation that's looking into it, you know. And I have another granddaughter who is learning to speak Métis. Métis, yeah. And it's nice. It's nice to know that someone cares and looking back into it. As a younger girl, until I was actually older and married, all the Métis stuff came up, you know. In my growing up years, there wasn't anything about, I knew where that my mother and father were born and raised, but never looked at it. There was no difference to me, as you know, that they were just my mom and dad and my aunts and uncles, you know.
So has Vi, like learning about this culture and exploring it, inspired you to also learn more about Métis culture?
I'm a little old to start into that stuff, which makes me happy that they're doing it, because as they learn, I learn, you know. It's pleasure. It's nice. Yeah.
What does it mean to you to see your face up on a gallery wall?
It meant a lot. Like, it's an honor, real honor. It's amazing that someone would take that many hours to do something like that. I'll treasure it, you know.
Elma Hussein, Indigenous beadwork artist Vi Hussein, her granddaughter, spoke with Marshall Hodgins. Vi's beadwork show is on at Ace Art. Today's the last day. It's on from noon to 5 at 206 Princess Street, but you also can see the work on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
For breaking news as it happens, stay with CBC News. For the latest updates and what it means for Canadians, stay with CBC News. When the biggest stories break, both at home and around the world, stay with CBC News.
Light snow falling. It is a -2 in the city of Winnipeg. Well, a warning, our next story contains graphic descriptions of sexual assault and may be triggering and disturbing for some people, but the details are important to talk about and to hear and understand. As we've been hearing in the news this week, 3 17-year-old male hockey players were arrested in relation to hazing incidents that happened in a Winnipeg hotel. The arrests were for sexual assault with a weapon, sexual assault, and forcible confinement. The incidents involved 5 rookie players aged 15 and 16. Todd Tisdale says he survived hockey hazing. He's originally from Swift Current, Saskatchewan, and he started sharing his story in 2021 to raise awareness about how the trauma of hazing can follow a person for their life. We reached him via Zoom in Medicine Hat for a very serious conversation with graphic content, and this is part of it, starting with his reaction to the latest case in Manitoba.
Oh, it's unsettling for sure. It's not a good thing for hockey. It's not a good thing for the people involved. And it's negative in every aspect.
15 and 16, that was the age of the rookies involved. Would you have been around the same age when you went through what you went through?
Yeah, I was 15 years old when the hazing happened to me.
Yeah. When did you first talk about it in your life?
It took quite a while. And then at 24, I had a significant nervous breakdown. And I actually went to the police and pressed charges. Nothing ever happened with that, but at least I had it out there.
I wonder, when you heard about the case, this case in Manitoba, what did you think when you found out that there were hazing arrests here that were made?
I think it's great that people are being held accountable for what they do. It's also sad in a way that it happened. It's not right that this happens in our hockey culture. Something has to change, and it has to change quickly.
People are saying, like, now, like, if we can't get out of this now, then when will we? So you were a teenager in 1986. That was the year, I think, that you went through what happened. Who were you playing with, Todd?
I was at a private college, Athol Murray College of Notre Dame. So it was the Notre Dame Hounds. I come from a huge hockey family. My brother played professional hockey. So I wanted a career in hockey as well. I wasn't the greatest hockey player. Like, I knew I wasn't going to make the NHL, but I still had a chance to, be an assistant coach, something in the aspect of the game.
When the hazing incident, when this was happening to you, this season this happened to you, where were most of the events taking place?
Yeah, we stayed in dorms, so most of them happened in the dorm rooms. It actually started off with really simple stuff. We'd have to go to the store for an older player and get a chocolate milk, or take their laundry to the laundromat, something simple like that. But it escalated after that, tenfold.
Do you remember what you were thinking even at the beginning when sort of these things were being asked of you as a rookie?
I didn't know stuff like that happened. My brother was there the year before me, and he played for the top team and was also a grade 12 student. So he was kind of untouchable as far as the hazing goes. So he wasn't able to relay that information to me, or I'm sure he would have told me not to go. But it was scary when I found out what actually happens there with they call it the old boy and the new boy system at Notre Dame.
So there was actually a name for this at that school.
Absolutely, yeah. This was definitely it was an old boy tradition. It was set up, to the younger boys wanted to be there for a year so they could be vetted in and become an old boy. And unfortunately, that's a systemic problem. It creates more old boys to abuse the new boys that are coming in.
What were some of the worst that happened to you, Todd? And take your time in describing. Obviously, there's value in hearing the realities of this, but I know you shared before, but I appreciate what this can take to share. So what was done to you? What happened?
Probably one of the worst things that happened to me is I was brought into a room, and there was already another boy standing there with a shoestring tied around his privates. And now they took the other end of the shoestring and tied it around my privates. And we were forced to have a tug of war. We couldn't use our hands. We could only use our privates. And we were forced to walk backwards until our backs hit the wall. And the person whose back hit the wall first was declared the winner. and they were allowed to go. The loser had to have another, whatever you want to call it, a tug of war with another new boy. It was kind of sick.
How many people were in the room watching this when this was going on for you?
Oh, I would say 10 or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. 10 mostly old boys in the room watching it. Yeah. Yeah. You know, it was very painful. I still have scarring on my genitals to this day. So
What did you do with that as a teenage boy?
yeah, that's the thing. I really didn't do anything. I just kind of, you know, I'm a rough and tumble hockey player. I should be able to deal with it. And deep down inside, I was hurting, but I couldn't really say that. It's just implied. Part of what happens. We really didn't talk about what was happening to us. A lot of the times, I didn't find out until recently, until all these other players have contacted me, that they went through like almost the exact same experience that I did.
What kinds of other things were considered part of this ritual, if you will?
Yeah, there was another incident where I was forced to eat macaroni made with urine. You know, I don't know what would possess a person to even think of doing that to another person. It's just, I would never think of doing that to another person. It's just unreal.
Was there other physical violence ever?
Absolutely. There was actually a player that made me do sit-ups. He whipped me with a leather belt on the forehead. Every time I would come down from my sit-up, now sometimes he'd miss me, hit me in the eye. So by the end of it, I was bleeding from my eye. He was whipping me with his belt in the forehead. And after I was done, he had spit his used chewing tobacco into a water bottle, and I was forced to consume that.
Was there choking involved as well for some of the players?
Yes, I was made to hyperventilate and then choke me. And the next thing I remember, I woke up and I was lying on the ground, passed out, which I think is very, very dangerous. I could have died probably. It's very scary.
Over what period of time were you forced to endure all of what you're describing here?
I was at the school for 2 months. And I would say once a week, a very traumatic experience would happen there.
And when you use the term forced to do these things,
there's always that threat of physical abuse if you didn't do what they wanted you to do. Now, me being 15, I was a lot smaller in stature than a lot of them. And they could, if they wanted to, they could do a lot of damage to me. So I just, went along, and it's humiliating to talk about, but you just do what you do to survive, I guess.
I'm just curious because especially how you've described this old boy, new boy thing, how it becomes normalized over generations. Maybe that's part of the reason why we're still in 2024 hearing about things that are very similar to what you went through as a teenager, Todd.
Absolutely. People are afraid to talk about this. I don't know why. I had people contact me, like after I went public, I had people contact me from every decade, like from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, right up to 2021 with allegations of abuse at this school.
What kind of an impact did the what happened to you have on your life?
Mentally, it hurt me a lot. I deal with mental illness, absolutely. It definitely was exacerbated by what I went through in Notre Dame. Yeah, after that tug of war, there was blood on my genitals and scarring from the just from the heat of the shoestring. Pulling, because it was done in a type of knot where the harder you pulled, the knot got tighter. So it was extremely painful. It was, I don't like to think of it.
What did this rob you of? I mean, you were a kid. You're now a grown man, but you are speaking up with strength today for all those other kids and teens out there that, what did this take away from you?
It robbed me of a life of hockey. I used to really enjoy hockey. I love hockey. My brother was very successful in his career, and I was not really able to enjoy that with him. It was only recently, 4 or 5 months ago, that I got back on skates, and it was extremely emotional for me.
I love that you got back on skates, though.
It was fun. Now I have a lawsuit underway where one of the abusers is a defendant, so it's all come full circle, I guess.
What does it feel to you knowing these practices are still taking place in sport and in a sport that you love, hockey?
It's tragic. And it seems like every couple of weeks we hear a story and we talk about that story for a couple of weeks and then we stop talking about it. And we need to elevate the conversation and keep talking about it and stop this from happening ever again. We need to stop this.
How are you doing healing the wounds that you sustained all those years ago? How are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. Ever since I went public, actually, I've started to kind of turn a corner. A lot of that is just to do with validation. You think that what you went through is really not that bad, but you find out that, hey, this was very serious stuff that happened. So yeah, I'm working with a lot of people. I'm working with Theo Fleury, who has helped me out a great deal.
What would you like to say to the 5 teens who were allegedly assaulted by their teammates?
It's definitely not your fault. Just cooperate with the police. Look for your supports, your key supports, your immediate family, and your friends, and lean on them and talk about it. Don't just hide it inside. Get it up there and really talk about it. It makes a difference to talk about it.
Anything I haven't asked you, Todd, that you would like to share?
There's one thing I would like to have happen, actually. When I was a kid, there used to be a program on Hockey Night in Canada called Peter Puck. I think if they rebooted Peter Puck into a 21st century type of cartoon and tackled these issues like hazing and abuse and sportsmanship and all those types of things, it would be great. So I think that would be a start to change these things.
What's the role, do you think, of parents and coaches in the conversation here?
It's paramount. It's paramount. Coaching especially. Coaches have to be trusted. They can't be male chauvinists. They have to be fair. They have to know their players, and they have to know what's going on in the dressing room.
Really appreciate you speaking with us today via Zoom, Todd Tisdale. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Todd Tisdale describing his experiences. He says he's a survivor of hockey hazing. I spoke with him yesterday at length via Zoom. Tisdale sued Ethel Murray College of Notre Dame in 2018. A statement of defense filed on behalf of the college said the college denies each and every allegation in Tisdale's statement of claim, including that it was negligent or breached duty of care. This was a boarding school, I'm just adding there. As he mentioned, he did recently amend his statement of claim. He filed a new version in 2022 that lists a second defendant in addition to the college. None of the allegations have been proven in court. If you want to weigh in, if you're listening, if you're a coach, if you're a player, if you want to weigh in, please join the conversation. You can reach out to us in a number of ways, radio 893@cbc.ca, and you can always call the listener line at 204-788-3205. Thank you for joining us this morning. It is 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. Heather Wells is in with other news updates. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's interim Liberal leader accuses the NDP government of being negligent with the provincial nominee program. Cindy Lamoureux says she has had hundreds of complaints from people waiting for their applications to be accepted. She says the nominee program ran smoothly under the previous PC government. Yesterday, the Conservatives demanded the resignation of Labour and Immigration Minister Malaya Marcelino. And at last word, a woman was in critical condition after being hit by a semi-truck last night on Henderson Highway. Happened around 7 o'clock at Henderson near Layton. Police say the driver of that semi remained on scene. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Man, that interview is still staying with me with Todd Tisdale. I'm just thinking I'm in my Jets jersey this morning. So many people are celebrating that mood and that part of the game, and so much to celebrate in the sport as well. It is -2 in Winnipeg. We've had light snow falling, and now we've almost got the sunshine in the light snow. So we've got the mixed bag of spring. For Winnipeg today, our high is going to be 0. It's going to be windy. Winds becoming northwest 40, gusting to 60 this morning. If you need us on the drive, if you have any other updates, please call us 788-3093. That's the commuter line. And coming up, the mother of a man who died from fentanyl poisoning is happy about the success that a mobile overdose prevention site has had in our city. A big report came out about it yesterday, and it did better than expected. Lots of reviews from the streets saying it was very effective. But she says it's only part of the solution for keeping people safe in the city from drug consumption. So she's in studio. Coming up after 8. Stay with us. It's 1 minute to 8 now, and World Report and the latest developments in international news are coming up next.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Over 3 nights, Noah Kahn just played to 60,000 people in Toronto, but it was just a few years ago that he was stuck at his parents' farm trying to figure out how to keep going. In a Canadian exclusive interview, Noah Kahn will be here to tell you how he did it.
I ain't proud of all the punches that I've thrown.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Our words matter. That's the message from a new study that says teasing children about their weight puts them at higher risk of body issues as adults. How we talk about our bodies and what that means for our kids, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Kayla Hounsell in Halifax. We begin in the Middle East and mounting concerns over an escalation to a wider conflict. Residents of the Iranian city of Isfahan captured what appears to be explosions on video. They occurred near a military site there. The U.S. believes the overnight attack to be Israel's retaliation for last weekend's missile attack by Iran, but Tehran is downplaying it. Chris Brown is in Jerusalem with the latest.
A witness on the ground in the Iranian city of Isfahan posted on social media that he had heard sounds of explosions and air defenses being fired, but that nothing on the ground was hit. There are many competing narratives, but initially, Iranian state media said 3 drones were intercepted and shot down. Isfahan hosts a major Iranian military base, and there are also several nuclear sites in the area. Iranian media is reporting those facilities are unharmed. Other Iranian reports suggest the drones were in fact short-range quadcopters launched from relatively nearby and not a long-range craft that would have flown from Israel. Reuters news agency quoted an Iranian official as saying they don't know who launched the drones, nor are there any plans for retaliation. Israel has been under pressure from the United States not to respond to Iran's attack last weekend that saw it fire more than 300 rockets and other projectiles, an attack that Iran claims was in response to Israel's destruction of its consulate building in Syria. The fact Iran appears to be downplaying this latest incident indicates its government may want to see an end to the cycle of strike and counterstrike, which, if so, will come as a relief to many in this region and far beyond. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
And the attack in Iran became a focus for G7 foreign ministers meeting in Italy. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken declined to answer questions directly about the incident.
I'm not going to speak to that, except to say that the United States has not been involved in any offensive operations. What we're focused on, what the G7 is focused on, is our work to de-escalate from any potential conflict.
In a statement, the G7 ministers are urging Iran and Israel to avoid making the crisis worse and warning Tehran of possible new sanctions, saying they will hold Iran accountable for what they call its malicious and destabilizing actions in the Middle East. The G7 ministers are also calling for more action in addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The world's biggest election is underway in India. Phase 1 of the country's vote has begun, with people braving the heat wave conditions and lining up for hours before the polls even opened. The 6-week-long election is considered a referendum on Narendra Modi and his Hindu nationalist politics. Modi is hoping to secure a 3rd term as prime minister. Nearly 970 million people are expected to cast their ballots in the coming days and weeks. Rajiv Kumar is the Chief Election Commissioner of India.
And I'm sure this time our young voters are going to come not only alone, but we have appealed to them to become our ambassadors, to become our influencers.
If Narendra Modi is re-elected, he will only be the second Indian leader to win a third straight term. The staggered elections run until June 1st. The votes will be counted on June 4th. 12 New Yorkers have now been selected to sit on the jury for Donald Trump's hush money trial. The 7 men and 5 women will determine the former president's fate following a process that saw dozens of people dismissed. Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying documents in relation to payments made to an adult film star. The CBC's Chris Reyes joins me from outside of the courthouse in Manhattan. Chris, what do we know about the jurors who have been picked?
Well, Kayla, they represent a cross-section of New York. They work in a variety of professional fields: law, banking, sales, tech, education. Worth talking about now that the jurors have been picked is security. For now, they're getting to go home. That could change. This is arguably the most high-profile court case in U.S. history. The judge has already asked journalists in the courtroom not to report some details about the jury, including where they work. John Muffler handled jury security as a U.S. Marshal. He says it will be a major challenge to keep jurors' identities a secret.
This is not an easy task because of technology today, social media postings, faces out there. It's easy to connect dots because everybody has information out there about them.
You know, the answer to that challenge, Kayla, could be that this jury gets sequestered at some point during this trial. They could be put up in hotel rooms, and those rooms would be guarded. We've seen that happen in some other high-profile trials in this country.
So what happens now?
Well, today, all that's left to do is to pick 5 more alternates. One has already been chosen. All the jurors will take an oath, swearing to be impartial in deciding this case and to only consider the evidence and the facts presented to them during the trial. This will be explained to the jurors extensively by the judge. And then Justice Marchand told lawyers to be ready to give opening statements on Monday. This trial is expected to last 2 months.
The CBC's Chris Reyes in Manhattan. Chris, thank you.
Thank you.
Here at home, the federal health minister is accusing opposition leader Pierre Poilievre of misleading Canadians. Mark Holland says Poilievre isn't telling the truth about the government's plan for a national pharmacare program. Poilievre has been attacking this week's federal budget while keeping quiet about what programs he would cut if he was prime minister. Tom Perry reports.
This budget, just like this prime minister, are not worth the cost, and Conservatives will be voting no.
For more than an hour, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre stood in the House of Commons attacking the federal Liberals and their new budget. With nearly $53 billion in new spending, Poilievre says the government's plan will only drive the country further into debt. Poilievre, for the most part, hasn't said where he would cut or whether a Conservative government would maintain programs like dental care and pharmacare, which Poilievre says don't yet exist.
Poilievre on the budget.
But in a radio interview with City News, Poilievre took specific aim at the government's pharmacare policy, making this claim.
Most of your listeners already have coverage through their workplace. The pharmacare bill Trudeau's brought forward would ban that.
The government's legislation does not ban workplace insurance plans, and so far is only offering to cover contraceptives and some diabetes treatments.
It's the dishonesty to me that is so reprehensible.
Health Minister Mark Holland says if Poilievre is against pharmacare or dental care, he should just say it. Instead, Holland says the Conservative leader is using fake arguments and lies to mislead Canadians. Tom Perry, CBC News, Ottawa.
It is expected to be another difficult wildfire season across this country. An unusually warm winter is fueling those concerns, especially in the Northwest Territories, which saw the largest evacuation in its history last summer. In their first briefing of the season, wildfire officials are predicting another summer of drought, and as Kate Kyle tells us, they're getting prepared.
So there's a lot of fuel there, a lot of forest that has not burnt yet.
Garth Walbridge isn't taking any chances. All fall and winter, he's been removing brush from around his home on Pontoon Lake.
We could have just as bad, if not a worse, forest fire season this coming year.
Walbridge is among the thousands who fled the territory last summer, when nearly 70% of residents were displaced by wildfires. Officials say conditions going into the summer are worrying. Snowfall levels were lower than average across the south of the territory, and they're predicting less rain than usual in the coming months. Richard Olson is a territorial manager of wildfire operations.
Ultimately, that means we're going into a third season of drought.
To be ready, the department is starting firefighter training early. They're monitoring holdover fires from the air with infrared scanners and ramping up fire smarting campaigns. Mike Westwick is the manager of wildfire prevention and mitigation.
Really encouraging and appealing to people's personal responsibility every step of the way.
Officials say the territory could catch a break in August when the dry El Niño weather patterns are predicted to shift, but rainfall would need to be extreme to bring water levels in lakes and rivers back to normal. Kate Kyle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. And if you're looking for tools to talk about the day's big stories with the little people in your life, check out cbckidsnews.ca. I'm Kayla Hounsell. This is CBC News.
Well, we've had light snow falling in downtown Winnipeg. We've got a cloudy sky, very similar forecast to yesterday, actually. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, the app or YouTube. Coming up this half hour in the show, Janet Stewart is going to let us know what the call-in is going to be on today on Radio Noon between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. So it's a new portion of that show. Make sure you tune in. We'll let you know. In addition, we're going to be talking about a report that came out yesterday about the mobile site, the mobile overdose prevention site. And here's what the report said. It's a lengthy report, but the headline is that it is surpassing all expectations. It is successful, but then it is also not enough. So we're going to hear from a Winnipeg harm reduction advocate who says the key to keeping people safe on the streets is a clean supply of drugs. And one of the summaries in this report also talked about the increasing toxicity of the drug supply on the streets of Winnipeg. So I'll have some details on the report, and then we'll have a full interview about this as well. Right now, 8:11 is the time, and Heather Wells joins us with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a former Winnipeg firefighter says the nature and repetition of helping other people in crisis is taking a toll on first responders. Earlier this month, firefighter Preston Heinbigner died by suicide. He was just 40. Josh Clausen used to be a peer support coordinator for the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service. Clausen was also diagnosed and treated for PTSD before leaving the job after 17 years. We're going to hear from him coming up. And Winnipeg business owners are gearing up for whiteout street parties starting Sunday. Will Galt runs Willie's Dogs. He's going to set up his hot dog cart at these street parties. He says the street parties are a chance to showcase the great things happening in our city after the Jets now advance to the playoffs, facing Colorado in the first round. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So yes, I'm completely biased showing which team I'm cheering for, but did anyone really expect me to cheer for one of the other teams? Like really?
Really?
Yeah. I'm fully wearing my jersey already this morning. Abby Adiyemi, what's the forecast saying?
Yeah, today's forecast calls for periods of snow, which we're seeing outside. We are currently at -2 now as the day progresses. The winds will shift from the west to the northwest with some gusty winds. Now, despite the chill stats, we should be looking at a high of 0 degrees today. Now, as we move ahead into the evening period, we're going to be getting light snow showers that will be tapering off, giving way for clearing skies. And for Saturday, it's shaping to be much better and brighter.
Here comes the sun. Doo-doo-doo-doo. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, that's the good news. We're going to be warming up. The mercury is set to climb to a high of 10 degrees tomorrow, so it's going to feel better. Compared to today, I'll take tomorrow. Brandon is currently at -4, Thompson at -8, Churchill at -11, Dauphin at -4, Steinbach, Maurice, and Gimli all at -2.
Speaking of Thompson, because of all of the snow up north from that 3-day system, let's mention a couple of closures. So DSFM this morning has closed École La Voie du Nord in Thompson, as well Mystery Lake School District, which is a number of different schools, are also all closed. So that is, of course, due to snow accumulations. Corey, there's a couple things to mention in traffic?
Yes. Multi-vehicle collision on Dublin and St. James, right in that intersection. Is blocking the entire intersection right now. So emergency crews are on scene there. Eastbound and westbound is down to single lanes on Dublin. So just use some caution if you're in that area. As well, got a call from Julie, who said she's noticed the fencing for the street party on Sunday is already been dropped off on Donald, and it got her real excited. So it's not blocking the street yet, obviously. It won't block the street till Sunday, but it is up, and she was noticing, so that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, it's going to bring a good vibe to downtown.
Yeah,
the weather looks pretty good. I mean, looking into Sunday, it's sunny 13. And we now know, of course, obviously that's the Jets' first game. That schedule just determined last night after the win. And yeah, exciting. I have to say also, I mentioned that Janet's going to be in this half hour talking about her call-in. Her call-in this week earlier was about foods, comfort foods.
Yeah.
So to that end, Abby, check it out. There is
the bag is empty.
The bag is empty. There's one left. So if you're on YouTube, you can see one left. Abby, describe what you made for me and what you brought. This is your comfort food.
It's a Nigerian delicacy. It's a comfort food. It's very low cost to make, very simple to make. Just mix up the flour with some milk and some butter and sugar to your level and deep fry it, and it's golden.
And it's called?
Puff Puffs.
Puff Puffs.
Because it puffs in the oil.
I feel comforted. I don't know. Sorry, Corey.
Should I make you more of this
For the
weekly?
record, Marcy ate about 70% of the Puff Puff this morning.
Is that your way of saying I ate a ton of them, or your way of admitting that you ate 30% of the Puff Puffs?
Yeah, which is still a decent amount of Puff Puffs.
Yeah, I know. This is the last one. I'm going to save the last half for later. Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
They always have lots of fun on the call-in. Many of you are writing to us on Facebook, sharing things, and you want the recipe, so Abby said he'll give it to us after the show, and we'll post it there on my Facebook page. Time right now is 8:15. Well, let's return to serious matters and some good news. It is surpassing all expectations. That is according to a report. I'm talking about Manitoba's only mobile overdose prevention site. Sunshine House runs the program out of an RV in downtown Winnipeg.
Just to throw out a little statistics, in 2023, if you look on I think it's the Department of Justice website, they noted that 445 people died from toxic drugs in 2023. That overlaps with a lot of the period of our evaluation, but we also want to highlight that none of those deaths took place at the mobile overdose prevention site. And that's the point. It's a safe space for people to access services, access supports, connect with community, and sometimes use drugs, and do it in a way that's safe and keeps them alive. So they're still around tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow.
That was Cornel Ashland from Lark Consulting at a press conference yesterday talking about the report, Asland rather. My next guest is Arlene Last-Kolb. She also considers the program a success, but she says it is only the tip of the iceberg. And when you look at the report's summary findings, it alludes to that as well. It talks about the increasing toxicity of the drug supply in Winnipeg. It also talks about more needing to be done. Arlene's 24-year-old son Jesse died of a fentanyl poisoning nearly a decade ago now. She's dedicated her life to advocating for overdose awareness. She is the chair for Moms Stop the Harm, which is a group that supports harm reduction approach. And she joins us in studio. It's really nice to see you in person.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
So what's your reaction about MOPS? Why do you think it's been such a success in Winnipeg?
Because it's been doing exactly the things that we've been asking about around harm reduction, giving the supports, giving the safe space for people to do their toxic drugs.
Is there something to the fact that it's sort of physically out there meeting people where they're at?
Definitely. It's definitely in the right place. It's mobile. It can move to where it needs to be.
Why do you think it's happening now? Because you have been advocating this for over a decade.
Because we have a change of government, and plus we have a harm reduction community that just never gives up.
What's your reaction to what was found in this in the MOPS report that talks about the toxicity of the drug supply increasing?
Well, I'm not shocked at all, considering, we've been collecting this data for years. So I'm not surprised at all. Nothing has changed. In fact, it's just getting worse.
We kind of heard that a little bit sort of anecdotally along the way. We were talking to Main Street Project a number of months ago, and they said they're having to use more naloxone to revive people, for example,
Yes.
because they have to go through sort of more doses
Right.
because it doesn't actually save someone sort of one shot of it.
Yeah, because of the toxicity of our drugs. And when you think about it, is that the answer? Is that the answer, to just keep giving out more Narcan and naloxone? We can't just keep doing that. We have to do much more.
What is the answer? What more would you hope might come as a next step?
That we replace the street drugs, that we replace the toxic street drugs with a regulated supply of drugs, that we do a different way, that we don't just keep trying to keep people alive, that we prevent these deaths, okay? Like the MOPS said, nobody died on their watch, but last December, 54 people died. Okay, 455 people died last year. Most of them are dying from the street supply.
How might we go about having a clean supply on the streets? Who do you hope is going to lead that effort, and what has been missing here in Manitoba?
Who needs to lead the effort is always government. Government has to have the will and the desire to do it, but it's other people will know how to do it. But I'm just talking about the fact that we have fentanyl on our street that are killing our loved ones all over Manitoba. How can we not be doing something about that? We can't just keep providing other things. The toxic drugs, not only are they killing our loved ones every day, but the toxicity is causing such great damage to our loved ones that is having a rippling effect on our whole community, on our policing. I just started to cry when we just talked about the firemen that died by suicide.
I saw you actually welling up and
because
you're
I
reacting to that
know
headline.
I know what it's like, and this is the effect that fentanyl is having on all of us. So we have to do something about the supply.
There is some disagreement or discussion still about the best way forward in terms of supervised consumption sites. So some are saying they should be mobile. Some people say a building will give people a place to go, and that might actually cause more harm and introduce them to other drugs. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I don't believe that. I mean, there's toxic drugs all over our city. I mean, look at it this way. If every person in Manitoba that took a substance, whether it's alcohol, cigarettes, or food, stood outside their front house, Manitoba would look very different, right? And maybe we wouldn't be so quick to judge and say, oh, it should be here, it should be there, right? I mean, why is fentanyl not only on our streets? How come it's not in our alcohol, our cigarettes, or our cannabis? Okay? Why is it on our streets? If there was an alcohol on our street that was 400 times stronger, killing people, it wouldn't be happening. So let's not overthink this. Let's just do the right thing. Let's not call it safe supply, safe regulated supply. Let's call it do the right thing.
So your example about alcohol speaks to a stigma about drug use.
Yes, we do stigmatize drug use, and yet people use substances all the time. And how can we stigmatize a young 18-year-old who got a pill from his brother or sister or his best friend, and it's full of fentanyl, and he dies? Okay? I'm talking about taking care of everybody. This is a human rights issue.
In terms of the best way, if the safe consumption, the static building versus a mobile site, what do you see as the future in trying to help people in the best way? And part of this report also says the safe consumption site building is a good start in the MOPS report, but I mean, one is a drop in the bucket in this report, it said. What are your thoughts on that? If it should be mobile or static, and how many we might need in your view?
Well, we definitely need mobile. We could use mobile all over our province. We definitely need supervised sites all over Manitoba, everywhere. They can be included in all kinds of health settings, but we also need the things that go with them, right? The supports and everything that goes with that. So we can't just, allow a person. We need more to it. But again, it doesn't make sense for me to have all these things and not offer people safer drugs.
Anything that you want to add this morning, Arlene, maybe that you've been thinking about or that you and your group have been talking about what your hopes are for the future in the province?
My hope is that we will see this in a different way, that we will care for everybody, that we will make drugs safer, and that people will remember that this can happen to anybody, and that I am here as a mother because I can say what needs to really be said. And I am doing this because I don't want anybody to go through what I'm going through. Okay, this is much more than just about supervised sites. This is about something that you have to live with, that you will never get over. There is a piece of me and my family that is missing. And I believe that our son and many of these deaths are preventable.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
That's Arlene Lost-Kobe. She is with Mom Stop the Harm. Her 24-year-old son, Jesse, died of fentanyl poisoning 10 years ago, and she's been advocating since then for overdose awareness.
Earth Day at Fort White Alive is a magical time, and this one is for the birds. Let's celebrate not by looking at the earth below, but by looking up to the skies at our feathered friends who make this place so special. I'm Bryce Hoy. Join me for a virtual bird tour. Come to Fort White Alive's Earth Day celebration April 21st and follow the posted QR codes to learn some amazing bird facts. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
It is 8:25 a.m. right now on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on the app or YouTube. Thanks for joining us today. It is Friday. We're all in a Friday kind of mood. And the weather is not as sunny as we might be feeling. It is light snow, -2. We are the warm spot in the province. Yep. The cold spot's Lynn Lake at -13 if you're looking at the spread there. And in Brandon, there's still light snow falling as well. And in Brandon right now, it is -4 degrees. Well, we have a bit of music this morning. It's a new single out from Manitoba's own Jasmine Elise.
Stars cry, but I'll still hear
pretty, eh? It's a new single. It's from Manitoba's Jasmine Elise with Oh My Darling. You can watch out for more of her soulful melodies this year. It is 8:28 a.m., a couple minutes before the news here. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. And my colleague who has so many different pairs of awesome glasses is in studio, Janet Stewart.
Thank you. They're readers. So they're not like, they're the kind that you can buy, for whatever. These are new. I thought that because we're sort of on YouTube at the same time, they'd be less intrusive.
Show the face
on my
more.
face.
Beautiful, Janet Stewart. All right, let's talk about what is coming up today. It is a task that people hate, or maybe some people love, but it's all about cleaning?
Yeah, it's true. We're heading into the weekend. It's spring. People talk about spring cleaning. It's not going to be that warm out this weekend, right? Not like you just are desperate to be outside. So maybe you can get some household tasks done. If you hear dread in my voice, it's because I'm one of those people who lives in a cluttered house and kind of dreads the thought of spring cleaning. So today we're getting me some help, and hopefully you too. We want to make this a conversation. We want to get you involved. Please give us a call, because this is for our call-in. We're going to have some cleaners with us, professional cleaners, who can give you tips on how you clean that really tough thing, like the gravy that overran and went into the glass in my oven.
Yeah.
Your oven door is dirty on the inside.
I got that gravy.
And then we also have a woman with us who is a psychologist and is doing a class in Brandon about how decluttering can help your mental health and how to do it without feeling shame.
Yeah.
How to deal with that. So I'm thinking about
important.
the conversations that you have with a friend or a parent or somebody that you think has an issue.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming, all of it.
Absolutely.
So that is the call-in between 12:30 and 1 on Radio Noon. Of course, Janet's hosting Noon right now. And leave us with the listener line, because people can leave a message right now if you can't participate live.
204-788-3797.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, that light snow is falling, and it's going to continue to do so until this evening. The wind is starting to pick up. We're at -2 right now in downtown Winnipeg. Today's high is 0. People will gather later today for the funeral of a firefighter. The death of Preston Heinbigner has sparked calls for more mental health supports. The 40-year-old died by suicide. His friends and colleagues tell CBC he had been struggling with PTSD. Former firefighter Josh Klassen was a peer support coordinator for the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service. He still teaches a mental health readiness program. Klassen says help is available, but it can be difficult to access.
If you knew where the building was, what it would be like in counseling, all of those things, when you're struggling, you actually need it. All of those things that are just small pebbles appear as boulders, and they're the barriers that stop you from getting help. You don't know who to call. You don't know what the building is like.
The United Firefighters of Winnipeg says the addition of Behavioral Health Unit by the WFPS in 2021 is a positive step, but it says more capacity is needed to make sure members can get care in timely fashion. A woman was in critical condition at Last Word after she was hit by a semi-truck. It happened around 7 o'clock last night on Henderson Highway near Layton. Police say the driver of that semi remained on the scene. Manitoba's interim Liberal leader accuses the NDP government of being negligent with the provincial nominee program. Cindy Lamoureux says she has had hundreds of complaints from people waiting for their applications to be accepted. Lamoureux has not raised the issue with the government.
A lot of these people who are bringing forward these concerns, they're quite nervous. They are very sensitive topics. They don't want whether they can stay here in Manitoba, their work permits, their study permits to be disqualified out of us bringing it forward.
Lamoureux says the nominee program ran smoothly under the previous Tory government. Now she says applicants are waiting up to 11 months with no updates. Yesterday, the Conservatives demanded the resignation of Labour and Immigration Minister Malaya Marcelino. They distributed a letter accusing the minister of threatening people who have participated in protests over immigration delays. Marcelino denies she has threatened anyone. Well, the Winnipeg Jets finished their season with a win, 4-2 over Vancouver last night. That's 8 straight wins. Nice way to finish the season. The win means the Jets matched their franchise record 52nd win of the season and the most points in the Western Conference. 2 players making their NHL debut after being called up from the Manitoba Moose. Nikita Chibrikov with his first ever NHL goal and the game winner, and Brad Lambert with an assist on a goal by Gabriel Velarde. Chibrikov called his goal a dream come true. As well, the Jets get the Jennings Trophy as the only NHL team having allowed under 200 goals this season. Now, the playoffs begin Sunday night with the Jets hosting Colorado, and Winnipeg businesses are expecting a lot more foot traffic as that playoff hockey begins, launching the whiteout street parties right around the Canada Life Centre. Local public eatery on Gary Street expects to be packed on Sunday. Bartender Lucas Preseado is looking forward to playoff biz.
It's definitely going to make this place go off the chain for busyness. I think that it's going to put some money in all our pockets as well. So no complaints on my end. I'm sure my coworker is going to be just as happy to serve everybody's as well.
Preciado hopes the Jets can make a lengthy run this year. Now, making sure every outdoor basketball hoop in Manitoba has a net. That is the goal behind Basketball Manitoba's Nothing But Net campaign. The executive director there, Adam Wedlake, says more than 700 outdoor basketball hoops are up around the province of Manitoba. He says most of those hoops and backboards are made out of metal and last forever, but the nets degrade quickly in our climate.
Since we launched this in 2021, we've done almost 400 of these 700 hoops have been equipped or supplied with nets. But like I said, those only last about 2-3 seasons.
This year, Basketball Manitoba is going to supply 250 nets to the first who register online at nets.basketballmanitoba.ca. Wedlake says everyone who makes a basket should get to hear that satisfying swish. You can find more news on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Agreed. Swish. Thank you.
Isn't that great? There's so many great sports sounds. Like when you hit the ball when you're playing golf, which I rarely do.
That's the best sound.
Yes.
Sorry. You can tell what sport I like. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
I want to give thanks to the people in the unit that work so hard. Our associate producers, Corey Funk, Abby Adiyemi, Chloe Friesen, Issa Kixon, Kalkadam Mulugeta, Sierra Sanders, Jim Agapito, Dylan Longhurst, Colton McKillop, Marshall Hodgins, Daniel Friesen, May McKillop, Bruce Layden, community reporters, Shanley Vidal, host Nadia Kidwai, Faith Fundel, Marcy Marcusa, that's me. Janet Stewart, our producer in unit, Wendy Parker, and our producer behind the controls of YouTube, Brad Lillies, Nellie Gonzalez, show producer of Current Affairs Unit overall, Leif Larson, senior producer of audio. Please do not take the speed at which I read that as a reflection of my care and my thanks to each and every one of those individuals in the unit. We just want to leave time for weather and traffic. So, Corey, what you got?
Southbound Donald and Graham, emergency crews are blocking the southbound curb lane, so look out for that as well. Dublin St. James, multi-vehicle collision, partially blocking that intersection as well. Eastbound and westbound is down to just one lane.
Abby?
Yep, snow and wind picking up, and of course tomorrow we're going to see sunny skies across board. Today, light snow except for Churchill, that is clearing right now. We're seeing highs from 0 to 2.
Nice. I love that is that nice? Well, that's nice enough.
It's nice.
I love that I thanked myself. Like, I think I did that last Friday, too. I'm like full Ron Burgundy these days. All right, take care, everyone. Thank you for listening to each and everything on the radio. Please give us feedback at 788-3205. And remember, Radio Noon, and they're calling as well between 12:30 and 1. Go Jets, go. We'll talk to you on Monday.